Madam Mayor, it is 6:02 and we are live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and I would like, welcome to the Lake Worth Beach Utility City Commission meeting of Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. Madam Clerk, can I have the roll?
Mayor Betty Rush,
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes,
Here.
Commissioner Ronaldo Diaz.
Here.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance read by, I'm having a rough time tonight. Ronaldo Diaz is going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, so
Stay
it's non-safe. There we go. Madam Clerk, are they, I'm going to ask the commission to move items M and N under new business up to become A and B of new business so that we, unfinished business, not new business, unfinished business. No, it is new business.
It's new business.
I would suggest we do N as in Nancy before M as in Mary. And
I
I
would-
would support that.
I would suggest that we move them up under new business, but after the water utilities items, because I just don't know that Mr. Shields needs to.
Oh, okay.
So is C the cutoff or no? C, D, E?
No, it's,
Oh,
I was going to put them. in-
okay. Yeah, I understand. It's just we have our water and then we have our electric and
Yeah, but,
B is the end of water.
G
I
is,
believe.
no, Mr. Shields is HII.
oh, well, okay. He can stick around. He's got a lot of,
If you don't mind, Mr. Shields, we're going to have you stick around. I'm sorry?
go up to G.
Yep.
Usually,
But we're gonna put M and N in front of you because it's a lot of public interest. And you want N before M?
N as in Nancy before M.
That's
correct.
right. I said, is there, why? I'm just curious.
Because the first is the bigger issue that the community is concerned about. M is a follow-up to that. It's a detail related.
Okay, does anybody object to that?
No.
N
Good.
and then M. Madam Clerk, did you get that? We're gonna have.
I
M-
did, and I also
Now-
have a deletion to the agenda.
Yes, and what is that deletion?
New business item L, the demand program consulting support was deleted and will be heard at the next regularly scheduled Utilities Commission meeting.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
second,
All in favor?
I,
Great, thank you very much. First, we have a report regarding Hurricane Ian by Mr. Liberty, our electric utility director.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Bill Record at Liberty Electric Utility Director. I wanted to take a few minutes without slides just to have a conversation in regards to how things went with Hurricane Ian. Most people here and most people at home actually felt how it went, so they probably don't need a lot of description from me on how it went, right? Obviously, we were fortunate that Hurricane Ian didn't do to us what happened to folks on the West Coast and then a little bit further up in the center of the state and on the East Coast above us. We were fortunate. So Hurricane Ian, as we all know, is about 175-mile-an-hour storm, came across the state. We were prepared ahead of time, as we are always. We brought in a large contingent of mutual aid or emergency workers that were housed locally in hotels in anticipation of a storm. Ahead of time, we mobilized that Monday morning. We had watched the storm through the weekend, and we held off until Monday morning. Then we mobilized and had crews head this way from the upper Midwest. That's how far out we had to go. There were tens of thousands of crews that were sucked up ahead of time by the large investor-owned utilities. My practice, which I brought with me from excellent utility that I worked for before in the Northeast, was to bring these folks in ahead of time, have them ready. My philosophy being that I'd rather have them here ready to go to work on day one, rather than open a hatch, see what we have, and then 3, 4, 5 days later, help gets here. Especially when those crews have already been grabbed by utilities that are much bigger than us. So we brought in about 54 line workers that included their actual line workers and their supervision, and 21 vegetation workers, basically tree trimmers. and we house them in local hotels. That's about 1/3 of the size of the contingent that we brought in ahead of Dorian, which is a Category 5 that was not too far from here on the other side. Just as with Dorian, it was a precautionary move that those crews were here by Tuesday night, certainly by Wednesday morning. They hunkered down in nearby hotels. And then by mid-morning Friday, we released them. We didn't need them. The storm had passed, and all the damage that we had, which was small, we'll talk about in a few minutes, could be handled by our own forces, and we didn't need to mobilize them. My understanding is other cities grabbed them within an hour.
Sam, somebody,
Somebody used them. We had also offered our own people after the storm to go work for other cities that might need them. We put that offer out there through the Florida Municipal Electric Association, which coordinates for all the munis in the state. Unfortunately, they were not needed, so they were ready to go. If they needed to, we were willing to send them, and they were not needed. So, in terms of our experience, we feel we did well. I think we had a maximum of maybe 300 customers that might have experienced some outages, which is markedly better than we had done in the past. We had less than, I think, about a quarter to under 0.5% of our customers experienced outages. The number for the county as a whole, we only compare to the county because we're not going to compare to parts of the state that we're not in. But the county had similar weather. Countywide, the numbers got as high as about 2%. We also restored much faster than many parts of the county. So we really did a very good job there. I have to commend Walt Gill, our assistant director for T&D, who's here today. For those of you who don't know, this will be Walt's last storm with us. Walt has announced his retirement. Tonight is not his retirement party. I agree. But according to our retirement plan, he is old enough and his years of service. I tease him. I think he started when he was 10. But tonight is not to remember Walt for the great service. We're going to be doing that at the November meeting. But I just wanted to mention that a lot of the improvements that we've had in the storm program come from the decades of storm work that he's done with us, and it's been great to have. So all in all, we did well through the storm. Glad to report that all of the areas that we had addressed with various SHRIP projects over the last 2 years, 3 years, did pay off. I think we might have had one incident in an area that we had worked on with SHRIP, and that was vegetation related. So the infrastructure held up well. Now, of course, we didn't get Category 5 storm winds, which we had designed the system for. And of course, that doesn't help you if a shed or a roof goes flying into it, right? But nonetheless, the system did hold up very well. One of the things that we've done is we've commissioned what we call an after action report, a formal document. We have it about 80% complete. Our compliance manager, Melissa, has been working on this document, and she has been holding interview teams in small groups of people throughout the organization, not just management, all the way down to the line team, system operations, materials management, every single group that participated in Storm, the meter shop, without supervision present, so that they could all speak freely. Let's talk about what went well and what could go better the next time. So she's in the process of assimilating that all into a document, meetings with the leadership team within the utility to talk about the feedback from the group, and then assimilate that into some very specific action items, which we'll follow up on. So storms are a process of continuous improvement. You don't want to do today what you did for the last storm. You want to do a little bit better. And every time you have one, you learn a little bit more. So I think that has a lot to do with how we've gotten so much better over the years. But I don't want to take anything away from the fact that we also got lucky.
totally.
We also got lucky.
Yeah.
And I'll take a luck any day. But so we'll be coming back to you at a later date when that report is final, and that'll be a public document. We'll share that with the city manager, and I'm sure it'll make it to you so you can see what we're doing. And we'll have a number of action items that we'll follow up on.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Thank you for that. Madam Mayor, if I could, I'd like to make a motion. It's a very small one. I would like to say that it should be a unanimous vote on the exit interview for Walt. If he doesn't get a unanimous vote, he don't go.
Think we're good to go?
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of shocking and sad. Next we have a presentation of the update of the FMPA solar projects by Susan Schuman, who is the Public Relations and External Affairs Manager. And I'm going to ask you or tell you, Ms. Schuman, that you have rather a challenge tonight because I personally, and I'm sure everyone else has gotten lots and lots of emails regarding the electric rates and the electric, why don't we go more solar? And I think there are quite a few people in the community that don't understand how invested we are in the solar. So my challenge to you is to knock them dead. Okay, please go real close to the microphone so people can hear you.
Yeah, you don't want me touching buttons. That might be disastrous. So thank you. Yeah, we are very excited about this project. It's one of the largest municipal backed solar projects in the United States. So it's growing. With phases 1 and 2 alone, we have 16 member utilities who participate, and Lake Worth Beach, of course, is one of those participating in both of those phases so far. That's about 300 megawatts that'll be online at the end of 2024 with phases 1 and 2. Lake Worth, you have over 36 megawatts in phase 1 and 2. So that's over 10% of
36.55.
Okay, yeah.
What percentage is that of our usage? I mean, is that
By 2026, that'll equal about 20% of our total requirement for energy.
Mhm. But wait, there's more. We are we're starting the development of phase 3. We're in the contractual process of that. And that will likely, because there's so much interest in it among the utilities, that will likely more than double what already exists for phase 1 and 2 will be doubled with the addition of phase 3. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So Ed, I greatly appreciate working with Ed, and congratulations on your performance during the hurricane, Ed. One thing that we do see is that the munis do perform very well following hurricanes, just because you're local and your main goal is getting your community and your family and friends back online. So I think that's always really good news to hear how well our members do. But Ed, in other areas also, he's very proactive with us regarding the solar program. He was one of the first, very enthusiastic members who was encouraging us to move forward with this rapidly so he could participate. And he's asked me to be here tonight, being proactive again, just to provide an update and give you an idea of the next steps that are coming up for all 3 of the phases. There's going to be several FMPA board and committee approvals that are required. Ed sits on our board of directors, so he does have he's a voting member. He provides direction on that committee, on that board. He's also on the solar committees for phase 1 and phase 2. So he provides direction for how each of the solar projects goes. But there's also some local approvals that he'll be bringing back in front of you in the upcoming months. So we just wanted you to be fully informed and be aware of everything before you need to take any action. So for phase 1, we have I feel like I'm trying to look over it. We have a power purchase agreement arrangement with Florida Renewable Partners, and that was executed in 2018. And that was originally planned to be 3 facilities. 2 of those are currently online and have been online since 2020. Unfortunately, the 3rd facility, which is the Poinsett facility, will not be developed. FRP gave us notice that this it's not a viable project anymore. The site itself has some physical limitations that they're unable to construct on that site, and the costs were just going up and up on it. So they notified us of that, and FMPA and FRP are going to be entering into a mutual termination and release agreement. It's a very straightforward agreement. There's no surprises, no tricks or anything. The parties agreed to terminate the PPA. The participants, including Lake Worth Beach, will receive the full termination payment. The terms, of course, are confidential, so we can't discuss them here, but Ed is up to date on everything. And the parties will release each other from any claims regarding Poinsett in the future. The Solar One committees, which Ed participates, are going to review and approve that in the upcoming weeks. And the FMPA board, hopefully, it's an aggressive schedule for us to get our approvals with them, but hopefully at our November meeting, we can get the board to approve that as well so we can move forward with the termination. And then the Poinsett participants, And the 74.5 megawatts that are part of Poinsett will be moved and redirected to a phase 3 facility. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
So there is no phase one anymore.
Phase 1 consists of the 2 facilities that are already online. Taylor Creek and Harmony are already online, but unfortunately Lake Worth Beach didn't have any megawatts associated with those 2 facilities. So it really is just a very unfortunate situation, what happened with Poinsett, that it can't be developed. But I think all of the participants and the parties, FRP and FMPA, all agree that this is really the most satisfactory outcome that we could have, given all of the options that we have, just to, cut it and move on and move on to phase 3.
Let me add that our commitment in phase 1 was 10 megawatts. That was the original tranche that we took, if you will, was 10 megawatts. So that 10 megawatts we would propose is going to move to phase 3, which is very attractive pricing. So we'd stay in the program. We're just going to go to phase 3.
Mhm.
We'll be talking more about that. So that site turned out to have a lot of challenges. It began with some very difficult issues with respect to interconnection agreements and transmission agreements, getting interconnected to the high voltage system. They were all overcome. And then the latest one was that the site was just not buildable in the opinion of the developer, whose responsibility was to build on that site. So this makes the most sense.
Thank you, Ed. And yeah, the developer is working with us. They want us to have a working project as well. So we are lucky that we are working with some good developers. Just unfortunate that it wasn't a very good site. So regarding,
Let me add too that they also have the balance sheet to enter into this type of a transaction and honor it. So that's very important, having creditworthy counterparties, and FRP certainly is a creditworthy counterparty.
Mhm. Yeah, we've gone out for RFP for each of the phases, and we feel very comfortable and confident with the developers that we've selected. So for phase 2, it's a very similar PPA agreement. It was executed in 2019, and that's with Origis Energy. Phase 2 is 2 facilities for 150 megawatts, and the Rice Creek and Whistling Duck facilities are currently on schedule to come online in December of 23 and November of 24, respectively. Now, another unfortunate situation, but it's not exclusive just to our projects this time, is that the market conditions and the regulatory and legislative issues and some supply chain issues have kind of forced Origis to propose some price increases to us. So the members have considered what Origis has proposed, and they have accepted these changes. They're still very competitive. They're just not as favorable as they were when we originally did the contract, unfortunately. So since the members have already kind of approved that, the PPA revisions are in progress. And once those are complete, that will require member approvals. So, depending on how the members go through that approval process, I believe Ed will probably come back to this governing board to approve those in the upcoming months. Don't know exactly when that'll be. And I do want to emphasize this really is a nationwide issue. It's not just our projects. Both of our developers and all of our counterparts across the country, we're actually lucky that we are still receiving competitive and favorable pricing with this, because a lot of projects have just been completely, they've either stalled or they've been canceled. So we can still move forward with ours with some pretty good, some favorable pricing.
So some additional details there. Our commitment in phase 2 was 26.55 megawatts. That's where the 0.55 comes from. We took everything that we could possibly get, and that's how we got the 0.55. It's also important to remember this seems to have slipped to the way far back pages of the press, but the Department of Commerce did kick off an investigation not that long ago into alleged dumping of solar panels by Chinese manufacturers through 4 Southeast Asian countries into the U.S. market. That wasn't an investigation of us. It was an investigation of these panels being imported at very, very low prices. That basically, in my term, locked up the industry for probably 6 to 9 months, if not longer, with uncertainty as to what they were going to have to pay for the panels for the projects that they had entered into contracts to build. And it gave them a pretty serious regulatory lever there to say this was absolutely beyond our control, that the Department of Commerce would step in. That affected the industry as a whole. I've heard numbers of upwards of 75% of the projects in the country were affected by that. Fortunately, the administration did step in and basically put that moratorium on hold. The investigation continues, but it freed up the panels to start flowing into the US market again. So the project's then restarted, but at a higher prices. In the meantime, copper, steel, labor, aluminum, glass, everything increased significantly in these projects.
Right. And we are expecting a preliminary determination from the Department of Commerce in the late November timeframe. But again, that'll just be preliminary and it sets up the further investigation into it. Again, choosing your partners wisely. Aura just has a policy now that they won't purchase, they're not purchasing out of China at all. They aren't going anywhere near there. So we will be working with them in phase 3 as well. So we feel confident that we'll be getting some safe panels.
So were they defective or were they just undersold?
I'm not sure.
The panels from China that you.
Oh, the Department of Commerce investigation, they're really investigating 4 other Southeast Asian companies because all of the panels coming from there may be circumventing a tariff that's on Chinese. So
Financial.
yes. Mhm. Yeah.
We should have bought them on the cheap.
Yeah. It was too good to be true pricing, I
right?
guess.
Okay, so all of it. Yeah.
Isn't the silver lining on that? That was a bit of a catalyst. There's a, I believe, movement from federal government to try and get manufacturing of those panels back in the US.
Mhm.
So
And that will add to costs. We all understand and accept that, but you want to avoid
Yeah.
illegal tariff evasion and you want to avoid any forced labor issues that we wouldn't have here. So, and that, just by the nature of it would increase the costs.
The investigation was actually begun based on a complaint from a US-based manufacturer who put together apparently a very well-written complaint, well thought out, that went to the Department of Commerce, and it was strong enough that they felt that there was a basis there was merit to the complaint and began the investigation. So to the extent that this causes more production here in the US, that would be good.
Mhm.
Or at least in countries where we don't have a tariff issue.
Right. Right. So as we've mentioned, phase 3 is currently underway as far as working on the contracts for that. And that will likely double the size of the Florida Municipal Solar Project. This table here just shows the indicative interest that we've received from our members. Again, we're very pleased with and very excited about the enthusiasm that our members have about this project. Ed tells me he's looking more at the 20 megawatt range, but we've given him a little bit of cushion there, depending on the outcome of his studies. It's going to be the same PPA structure that we've seen with phase 1 and phase 2. So it'll be very familiar to Ed and his colleagues who have already participated in the solar. We're looking at very competitive pricing. It's still not fixed yet, but we're looking in the ballpark of $35 to less than $40 a megawatt hour, which is very competitive compared with traditional generation. The final pricing will depend on several factors. And this pricing, the reason it's so popular with our members and why they're so interested in it is because this pricing at $40 a megawatt hour is about half what you would pay if you had a community solar, or maybe a third to what you'd pay for rooftop solar. So it's just the most cost-effective way to get a large amount of solar power to your customers. So a lot of our members are very interested in that. And we get the economies of scale by combining all of our member interests together.
So I just want to reiterate that. So what you're saying is by participating with the pump projects, the 2 and 3 now, the cost to the city of getting that electricity would be, or providing that electricity would be less than, people talk about community solar rooftops,
Mhm.
just because it's a bigger project, it's a scale economy.
Yes.
So we do have to wait 3 years for this project to come online, and the project we were hoping to get 10 megawatts out of
It's
didn't
gonna
come
happen.
through. So there's a lot of different
Sure.
things
There are
that we need to discuss
risks.
about how
Mhm.
quickly can we reach our goals. And so I think this is a great piece of the puzzle. I don't think it's the only one.
Exactly. And there's difference with rooftop solar. It's not the city that's doing the capital costs on it. It's the
Right.
individual owner that's providing that capital cost. So that's
Mhm.
very different.
Sure.
They're
Yeah.
not apples to apples
Mhm.
comparisons. And similarly, there are community solar projects that are pretty competitive.
Mhm.
So it's a mix. It's obviously good, but I think we want to be open as a city to multiple different approaches.
No, I
We are.
agree. And many of our members are investigating the exact same things that you're discussing here right now. You know, a lot of your customers, you know, they may not be able to afford, they may rent and they can't put solar panels on their house, or they just can't afford to, or they have a tree, you know, their house is covered by trees. So this would be a good alternative for them. And some of our members are actually providing an option for a solar subscription. If you receive, you know, 26 megawatts from phase 2, you can subscribe, you can have your customers subscribe to, you know, 100% of their usage and pay, you know, you develop some kind of a surcharge on the rate so that they could pay and say, I'm a 100% solar with a surcharge. So we do have several of our members who have either implemented that or in the process of implementing it.
Is that something that we're considering?
Absolutely, it is. We've talked about that a lot. Of course, we need a
You
new,
mentioned that before.
we need a new billing system that'll help us do that. But yes, that's something that we contemplate doing, offering a solar subscription rate. It wouldn't make sense to do it now because the solar project that we built in the city, and we see numbers of 35 to 40. The solar project that we built in the city is closer to 140.
Megawatts.
No, dollars per megawatt hour.
Sorry.
And that has to do with the way it was structured financially, but also the small scale. So it gives you an idea of the leverage that large projects can have in terms of pricing over small projects. So that,
Commissioner Stokes?
I have a question about the 20 to 30 megawatts. So we said that, and you're leaning closer to the 20, but we just heard that we lost what we thought was going to be
Right.
10, and that's rolling into this project?
yeah, good question. The 10 that we had in phase 1 is rolled up into the top line. It says point set participants.
Okay,
So we're already in that 74.5, assumes that our 10 rolls right into that. So this is 20 to 30 above and beyond the 10 that we'd be moving.
thank you. And is there any kind of like, as this project comes online, if there's any bumps in the road about that, are we kind of like first for not getting, like ending up in the same position where we did last time, where like two of the 3 facilities came online, just not the one we were part of? Like, how do we have to like pick ahead of time which one, or are we like the point set participants? Do we have like priority if things go sour because we kind of got?
Well, unfortunately, as the PPAs are designed, you would be assigned to a specific facility. But at FMPA, we are very aware of what the point set participants, several people have been waiting years. And so we are doing everything we can to find the most favorable arrangement for the point set participants. There's no guarantees, but we will be working with the developers who understand the situation, and that many of our members have been waiting around for their solar for some time now. So
So
Sorry,
this
your
is-
time is up.
Oh, thank you.
This is under old business. This is not a presentation.
It's a presentation.
It's a presentation.
I thought this was under old business for some reason.
No, it's a presentation.
Well, would the commission like to continue to discuss this matter?
So,
So under the, thank you, Sheila. Under the current plan, the most recent plan, we would begin receiving power at the end of 2023, another bunch at the end of 2024, and then another bunch at the end of 2025. So it's spread over that 3 years. I'm looking forward to seeing this power come online. Later on tonight, we're going to talk about our integrated resource plan. You'll see where the 20 to 30 comes from, because that ties back to numbers that are coming out of the integrated resource plan. So you'll see that 20. I stretched a little bit and said, hey, if we can get to 30, that would be great. So I said 20 to 30, but the resource plan is saying close to 20.
so as a result of, as we add on more solar, I mean, number one, inherently, it's a good thing because it's renewable resource. We'll give that, but dare I ask, will there be a reflection in the lowering of the rates of our electric as part of that?
That's a good question. I think it'll put downward pressure on rates, especially if we stay at the current gas prices.
Mhm.
So with gas prices above $6, I would say that solar is going to save us money.
But gas is not at $6 now.
Yes, it is. It's $6 plus. And there are times this summer when it got up to $12, $13, and $14.
That's not, that's not.
We're talking yes, natural gas,
Expert on the stuff.
the natural gas, which is used in our contracts. That being said, natural gas is maybe 50%, about 50% of our energy portfolio in terms of pricing. There's a small piece that's coal, less than 10%. That number is going away by the end of 2025. We want to replace that with even more solar. And the integrated resource plan, you'll hear later on, will take that into account. So natural gas is obviously a volatile commodity in the markets, and is going to continue to be that way for a number of years. And solar gives us a physical hedge. You can do financial hedges by buying futures contracts, which we're not presenting tonight. But you can also do a physical hedge. So you're replacing that fuel source with another fuel source that has a locked-in price for 20 years under power purchase agreement.
Oh.
That's a very attractive way to go. So we'll be going from, let's say, 50+%, roughly 50% on natural gas to much, much less on natural gas when we add the solar.
And one thing I hear you saying is that there would be less volatility in the prices because of their it's 20-year purchase. We know it's a future to it that we pay.
Correct. Under these contracts, there's power purchase agreements are typically done in one of two ways. One is a fixed price, the same number every day of every year for 20 years.
Okay.
That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is you agree to a 1% or 2%, usually 1 or 2% escalation, where you say, I'm going to start out a little bit lower now, and it's going to grow a little bit over time. I like the escalation because it tends to be much better price today.
Okay.
And it gets a little bit higher in the future, but you have to assume that natural gas prices will be going up as well, which is what history generally tells us has happened. And every indicator we have today says natural gas prices are probably not going to return to the $2.50 to $3.50 range that we saw for almost a decade.
Where does our natural gas come from? Is it like Louisiana?
Actually, some slides on that I prepared in anticipation of that, but a lot of it does come from Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, Texas, all the areas that are accessible by pipeline into the Southeast.
Amazing when you think that coming from Louisiana or Texas, there is literally a pipe. You can see as you drive up the turnpike and stuff like that's, I mean, I always think, what if one person just went?
Yeah, we try not to disclose the actual locations of those pipes.
Vulnerable.
But there is a network of pipes that serves the whole Southeast. And interestingly enough, you say, well, what's happened in the country? That network of pipes is connected, the ankle bone is connected to the leg bone, the hip bone, and some of us now know knee bone, and it goes on up, right? As you get further and further up the coast, there are more and more users of energy, more and more coal plants that are being retired, and that load is shifting over to natural gas plants. So there's more demand on natural gas. The economy, industry recovering from COVID at a higher rate than was expected, is now putting tremendous pressure on natural gas. So the natural gas that was available to us in the Southeast is being drawn to other markets.
Because coal's going out.
Because coal is going out and they're converting to a cleaner fuel, which is natural gas and of course solar, but a lot is going to natural gas. So there's more demand for that natural gas. Combined with that, most people don't realize, but global events are now at the doorstep here in Lake Worth Beach. What do I mean by that? The war in Europe, rapid industrialization and growth in China, in India, and other markets. There's a huge demand for natural gas. If you think our gas prices are high, natural gas prices, imagine in Europe, those prices are times 10 today. So what you're paying today for natural gas in Lake Worth Beach is 1/10 of what they're paying in Europe. So gas that is coming out of the ground here in the US is being liquefied into LNG, liquefied natural gas, loaded on tankers, and is going to Europe. So anywhere between 12 to 16 billion cubic feet per day of gas is leaving the US markets and going to Europe. One of those terminals had a fire and went out of service earlier in the year. That meant that gas could not be liquefied, so it stayed in the US market, which actually pushed the price down shortly. But then the price turned around and went back up. When that terminal comes back on, that'll be another 4 BCF or so a day shipping. So 12 to 16 billion cubic feet a day out of the country, out of the Southeast area at 100 BCF is going international, chasing a very, very high price that's available in Europe. Of course, Germany, France, Ukraine, the Netherlands, and India and China are in serious need for that natural gas.
Because
So
just cut theirs off.
Correct. We hear these things, you may hear them on various talk shows. You hear about the Nord Stream pipeline. Well, what is that? There's two pipelines called Nord Stream, which serve from the Russian fields into Europe. One was out of service. They were both damaged recently. Unknown as to when they'll resume full production. Not sure if that's a physical issue or a political issue. Bottom line is Europe isn't getting the gas they needed, and whatever gas they can get from the US is going to Europe. So that all translates to much higher supply and demand.
More.
Why we're paying more? Because the gas is worth more. So there are physical issues. That's true. And there are also market issues, global issues that affect the price of gas.
Can I just take a second too, as we're talking about this, because it is very frustrating, the effect that this is having on our local community. But when I hear about this and I think about the effects coming into winter that this is going to have on the Europeans, that is devastating. So I never want us to lose our community when we're having these conversations. And I have no control over the prices, but I think the things that at the federal level they're talking about, can we stop more of our gas from going over there to help our local residents? These are really tough conversations to have, because heating in the winter is life or death. And so this is a major problem for us, for everyone.
But the problem is actually much closer to home. If you have relatives in Boston and New
Yeah, I
England,
was gonna say, you're talking about.
this is going to be
100% too. It's a problem for anyone in the winter, everyone.
well.
One
it's-
person's problem doesn't
it's-
diminish another person.
It's even more of an issue for New England, because New England for decades has relied on liquefied natural gas imports. LNG does come into Boston because there's not an adequate enough pipeline capacity to get gas into New England. So the New England area has been relying on LNG imports for decades, and that's going to become acute this winter.
Yeah.
Having lived in
So we're way.
Minnesota, I feel they're.
I think
It's not done yet, are you?
it speaks to.
Have a little bit more. It's all part of the conversation, so I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah.
It needs to be
And it's an
discussed.
important piece that we haven't talked about, in addition to the use side of it, that Commissioner Stokes points out of it's a big deal when you're using it to heat in a cold climate, and you've got to use it. The other side of it is that, at least in the US, an awful lot of the natural gas that's being produced over the last stretch is fracked natural gas.
Right.
And there is a lot of concern around the US. New York decided, after a lot of research, they would not allow fracking. Pennsylvania went whole hog in for fracking. Florida is mixed bag. But one can expect, I think it's probably important to recognize that not only is the price volatile, that's perhaps not really the full picture. The price clearly is going to have an upward trend. It's going to have noise around it, that's the volatility, but it's going to have an upward trend. And that upward trend is going to be a number of things. There's not an infinite supply of this stuff. At some point, you pump it out, and there are regulatory issues, there are environmental issues, and there's an enormous amount of concern worldwide that burning stuff is a really bad idea at this point in our world history. So whatever it is, yes, it's a little cleaner to burn than coal, but it is not cleaner at all in terms of CO2 production.
And it's not
CO2
considered
production.
renewable, so.
And it's not renewable.
Okay, so
So all of that plays into the picture as well.
why don't we hear a little bit more from you? This is Andrew.
I don't have much more. And, as we noted already, this certainly complements the information about solar is complemented by what we're discussing about natural gas.
It's a rabbit hole, but
Yeah,
we went down.
exactly. No, that's okay. I'm in the industry. I hear it all the time.
Lucky you. Jealous.
So I can go very quickly through what I have left. So I appreciate your patience with this topic. We are looking to work with the two developers, FRP and Origis are working with us on PPAs for phase 3. So that kind of mitigates the risk of having all our eggs in one basket. To Commissioner Stokes' point, at least if we have the two different developers, we mitigate some of the risk of having an issue with one of the developers. And we're looking for COD in December of 25 or 2026, depending on which sites we select.
COD.
Commercial operation date, sorry. So again, very quickly, we aren't requesting any action at this time, but Ed being super proactive the way he is, he wanted all of you to be informed and to understand what's happening in the industry and with these particular projects and what actions are coming up. So the next steps for phase one, the solar committees in which Ed sits and is a voting member, they will be reviewing the point set, termination and release agreement, and hopefully approving it. And then the board and executive committee will need to review that and approve it. For phase two, we're revising the PPAs to reflect the updated pricing. And Ed and his colleagues that participate in Solar 2 will need to get their governing board approvals. So he'll be back in front of you for those approvals for phase two. And for phase three, we're still in the beginning steps of this. We're sharing the confidential information and details with participants right now. We're looking for commitment, and this would be a non-binding commitment, but just an indicative commitment for the member participation in November. You saw the 20 to 30. If we could narrow that down by November and get some kind of a non-binding commitment. And the reason we're looking for that is because the developers can then lock in the prices. The prices are going up as we speak, so they can lock in the prices that they've given us today if we can get them that commitment. So we're looking for that. We're working with Origis and FRP. As I said, they're going to be very similar PPAs to phase 1 and 2, so it'll be very familiar. Shouldn't take a whole lot of time to develop those. And we're looking at spring of 2023 to execute the PPAs, and that will include all of the other enabling documents that Lake Worth Beach and the other participants would need to be a part of phase 3. So that's just what's ahead, and that you're going to be seeing a little bit more about these projects in the upcoming months.
Great, Commissioner McVoy, quickly, so we
Thank
can
you.
move on.
And PPA purchase power agreement, same as what you would have with a gas powered plant or nuclear plant, just for people's information. A couple of quick questions for you. Ballpark, very ballpark. Cost of building a 300 megawatt solar field versus cost of building a 300 megawatt fossil fuel plant or 300 megawatt, nobody builds a nuke plant, they build them bigger, but ballpark, just some idea of the cost.
I honestly do not know the answer to that question. I'm not an expert in these kind of costs, but we can certainly get that information to Ed that he can share with the commission.
I think it'd be helpful
Sure.
for people to know. I mean, nuke plants are extremely costly to
Yes,
build. and
they are.
Extremely costly to decommission. And whereas there's not much to a solar field, you buy the land, you put up some structure, you put the panels on
Right.
and wiring.
Right, there's no
Second
maintenance.
question, FRP and Origis, I don't know quite how it's pronounced, but both of those, how are they tied, if at all, to either FP&L or NextEra?
FRP is a subsidiary of NextEra Florida Renewables, I think, which is NextEra Energy.
Right.
So yeah.
And or Origis?
Origis is not associated with NextEra or FRP at all. They're completely separate.
Separate.
So, mhm.
Okay. And the third one, does either phase 2 or phase 3 include any battery storage?
That's a good question, and I'm sorry I forgot to bring that up at the time. For both of those RFPs, we did request pricing and scenarios and specific instances for for storage. And the pricing isn't there yet. And I think one of the things we would need is an actual case of what we wanted, which with our varied membership, we really can't come to that right now. So with the pricing and with the varied interests of our members, we don't have that right now, but we are allowing for retrofit on either phase 2 or phase 3 for any kind of solar storage in the future. So that is something that we're considering.
Good. And does the act that was passed in August, the IRA Inflation Reduction Act, because that was a game changer in terms of financing for various forms of renewable energy. Is that playing into any of this, or is all of this negotiated prior to that and really not taking advantage of it?
No, it is playing into it. The ITC, the investment tax credit, was extended at the 30%. So that was in our favor because that cost will be passed through to us from the developer. But other things such as the labor component of it, there are certain employment requirements that will increase the cost of that as well. So it's kind of a balancing act, but those are certainly being considered by both of our developers, and the costs or savings passed through to us in their pricing.
Great, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much, and thanks for engaging us in our little conversation.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just want to remind Director Liberty that it is October 25th and you said you wanted an answer by November-ish?
Indicative, non-binding.
Right.
But yeah, it's something that we can show it's something that we can show the developers that in good faith, we are, so they can go ahead and start making their purchases and lock in the prices that we have.
So are we
before-
still leaning towards the 20? Because we have a few weeks to figure this out.
We're going to see more of that later on tonight when we get in the integrated resource plan discussion. I can tell you I'm leaning towards the 20, and we would be leaning to have a more formal discussion at the November meeting.
That'd be 20 plus 10. Because of the other one.
Correct. So we're currently, look at it this way, we're currently under contract for 36.55. We would be looking to grow that to 56.55 in total. So we'd be another 20. But we'll come back for, you'll see that come play out in a few minutes in the integrated resource plan discussion and get into more detail.
I can hardly wait.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
This is stuff we live for.
It's a
cool.
passion. Okay, next we have public comment of non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do you have any cards?
I do, Madam Mayor, I have two.
Tom, why don't you just give it to me and they don't have to look like it? You give it to me because then you makes Carmen doesn't have to stand up. Oh, I don't know why we still do that. Thank you. This is not agenda. Okay. So Madam Clerk, why don't you go first?
Okay, the first comment I have is from Marilyn. I apologize for the last name, Soazel at 222 North Federal Highway, Apartment 5. I strongly feel that the city should go solar. It is a no-brainer. We live in the Sunshine State. The cost of natural gas keeps going up and we simply can't afford it. Let us be an example. And then my second one is from Kara Jennings at 822 North C Street. It says, it is disappointing to see that the commission enact a new rule limiting only the first 10 submittals of public comment to be read into the record. It seems that you made this decision based on a few meetings where dozens of comments were submitted, mostly related to the Gulfstream project. To apply this policy broadly to all commission meetings and even these utility meetings is unnecessary. You have taken the online public comment tool that did an incredible job at increasing participation and limited it. When each of you ran for office, you said you would do your best to increase participation, to honor public input and increase transparency. This policy change does none of that. Please revoke this policy you just recently passed. If you only have a specific meeting that garners so much public comment that it becomes a significant time issue, then you can move that item to a special meeting or you can modify your rules for that specific meeting. You do not need to limit public comments being read during the agenda item for every commission meeting. This is overreaching. It is important that all the public comments are read at the meeting because this is when you are making the decision. To have them in the record but not shared at the meeting is essentially meaningless. I know we can email you prior to the meeting, but that is not the same as having the comments shared to you as a group. I hear the mayor commonly complain that meetings go too long and you have just amended your policy to mandate meetings end by 10 p.m. The reality is participatory democracy takes time. And if the voters' voices matter, you will make the time for them to be fully included. That is all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I have a few up here. And we're going to start with Edward Rivera. Edward Rivera, Mr. Rivera. Yes. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eduardo Rivera. He's Ed, but I'm Eduardo.
Yeah.
Okay. I rent Lupita's restaurant. Is located on 301 North Dixie for 8 years. I have the bills, the correct bills, the evidence here, but I want to just do it more easy to understand. Okay. For 8 years, I'm not being paying more than $1,400 to $1,700. for 8 years. It's in between. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you an example. First, I tried to talk to the manager, Donna Reed. She's not talking to me. She doesn't want to talk to me. I don't know why. We are the people. We vote for you guys. We love you guys. We really need you guys to listen. She sent somebody else and she told me that they changed the meter and they're just following what the meter says. And the meter says $2,000 more of what I used to pay. I'm gonna give you an example. April 2021, I paid $14.67. June 2021, $16.63. Now let me jump to this year. January 2022, $15.51. April 2022, $17.06. Okay. My surprise was last August, I received the bill for $3,331 because of this new meter. And then I tried to complain and I tried to talk to the manager, but I couldn't talk to her. Okay. So I have no option but to pay that bill. And the next bill, September this year, it came $3,675. We're talking about 100% increase. I cannot live like that. I have to close my business if this continue. Not only me, but it will be more people that they have to close their business. And you guys don't want that. We want the city to succeed. We want more business open. Okay. So please do something about it. I have 9 employees and we support their families and
For a
they
long
can-
time.
for a long time.
Yep.
And if this continue, I'm not gonna be able to pay. I also want to let you know that I have a monthly rent of $5,000 there. So we're talking about almost $10,000 a month. It's very hard. It's almost impossible.
That's.
And thank you for
I'm
understanding.
not an expert.
No, thank you for understanding.
I'm going to turn this over and he's going to be delighted that I do this, but I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Liberty because it does seem like twice as much.
It exceeded.
Bill has gone up a little bit, but nothing like this. So
50%, 20%, I understand. Even 30%, I totally understand, but not that much.
okay, so
I cannot afford it. No, but I can give you one.
okay, I think the best thing to do really is just to find the customers, the electric customer service. Every once in a while, we have some issues. So I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention.
No,
Hopefully, we'll be able to find out why or why not or what.
exactly. Hopefully you can do something. Yes, it is. And I appreciate it very much. And nice meeting you, man.
Our
Nice
community,
meeting you. Okay, thank you, guys.
a well-renowned banker.
Certainly the odd thing about the jump is the price increase. I mean, obviously, we would want to look at the usage, not just the
Right.
dollar value. That's critical because we don't know whether you added another refrigerator, who knows what, but
And actually, sir, you know what I did? We unplugged one freezer and one air conditioning. And the second thing, this is the low season of the year. So that tells you that there is no more appliances included.
yeah, no.
So this is
Look at the
exactly,
usage data.
exactly.
It's odd that the August one went up because that's before our price increase. So clearly there's some usage after that.
If you really want me to get into it, I'll tell you exactly what happened here, and there's an entirely different story.
Oh.
Which the public will hear at a later time.
Do you have a response or not? Okay.
I think it's best that we discuss because there are more issues here and the bills are in fact correct. They were not correct previously.
Okay.
And we have another discussion on it.
We'll look into it and see. Like I said, I have no promises of what the answer will be, but it will definitely be looked at for sure. Thank you, Ryan O'Blander.
Hello, Ryan Olander from 1702 North A Street, currently serve as chair of the Electric Utility Advisory Board. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. There's an agenda item today. I wasn't sure to put it under public participation or unfinished business, but the agenda item you're going to be discussing is about the new integrated resource plan.
Which is an agenda item.
This is technically not about that. It's about the board. So I'll just keep on going with that. So The Electric Utility Advisory Board has met multiple times on this particular topic. We had a dialogue. We're going to be presenting at a future date. I think probably in November or something like that. So at the first of these meetings was back in August, we were tasked by our board liaison to go out to the public and get public feedback about our carbon reduction timeline goals for our city utility. And I just wanted to remind this commission that in July of 2019, a prior commission enacted ordinance 2019-07, rewriting Article 20 and effectively castrating the board's purpose and duties. So gathering input from the public is no longer one of our duties, and technically sharing information with them isn't either, according to the definition. However, if this commission feels that a certain topic, such as this integrated resource plan or anything else in the future, merits enough public input well in advance to the point where it'd be coming into a presentation to this commission, that you would directly tell the board that this needs to happen, or you can have the board liaison issue that request, but also with the means to organize and publicly advertise a town hall style meeting with staff and access to facilities like the Hatch or the library or even these chambers. So I know these types of meetings are not largely attended, but for the sake of public participation on issues that will affect every residential and commercial customer in the city for many years and decades to come, we can try. Now, if you're thinking, why don't people just go to the advisory board meetings? Well, I can tell you that over the years that we are not the most popular board to attend, and we very rarely get public comments or outside participation, with the exception of Vice Mayor McVoy, who has been attending and participating quite regularly. So thank you for your time.
What was at the beginning, Ryan, what you said, the ordinance, was there an ordinance number? I just wanted to say.
Oh, yeah, that was 2019-07, Article 20.
Wait,
Let me provide some background on what that did.
okay,
That clearly defined the role of the advisory board to be one of providing advice when requested by the commission or the utility director. And since then, I think we've engaged them that's at least twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, to go study specific issues and come back. So they can be engaged either by me.
so it was narrow.
It was narrowed.
Right, okay.
Right. They would be engaged either by me or by you. And I want to say that at least 2 or 3 or 4 times we've done that, but I don't see any reason, and I would fully support, by the way, if having a public workshop. All of the meetings are open and advertised. Members can, of the public can come to the meeting, and actually, whether they live in the community or not, they can join the meeting. So I'm not opposed to having public forums at all.
Mhm.
And I think that the resource plan is a good thing to discuss in public.
2019, what was it? I'm sorry.
No, 2019-07. It was
That was the.
Article 20 or Article XX, however you, if you don't like Roman numerals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Amber Landacre.
Really need to speak, but mine's kind of going in the same direction as Eduardo. I really, so when,
Your name.
yeah, Amber Landacre, and I'm at 1020 South End Street.
Mhm.
I was shocked when I got my August bill as well. It was a little bit higher than usual. It was $250, my utility bill. It was $250. It's me and my boyfriend. We live in a 900 square foot house. It's usually during this time, maybe at 200, maybe at 225, not at 250. So imagine my surprise when September came and my bill was $325. I live paycheck to paycheck. I worked very hard. I abide by all the laws, and have a city come back and tell me, oh, we're going to take another $75 without any warning. So I moved to Lake Worth. I love the city, but it's going to be really sad that I'm going to have to leave because I can't afford my electric bill. Not that I can't afford my mortgage, not that I can't afford my car payments, but because I can't afford my electric bill.
There have been sort of explanations at these meetings about why that happened. I'm not saying that's satisfactory or
No.
cold comfort. Let's just say it's cold comfort. We're all facing, the same rate increases, and we're trying to address them as best we can. It's not frivolous. It's not to pay for vacations. It's, you know,
I appreciate that, but I might have to just keep coming back and voicing my opinion about the increase that has occurred. I mean, fortunately for me, I feel very, very fortunate. Mine only went up $75 a month. I have friends where it went from $400 a month to $800 a month.
well, yeah, okay.
So there are some.
Some of those need to be followed up on as well.
So, if this is going to be a continuous thing, then it's going to really financially hurt me. And it's going to be even put me in a worse position if I have to try to sell my house, which I will probably lose money on because I can't afford my electric bill. And I just know I've been here since 2014 and I would really hate to leave this city because I do love
I would
it.
hate you to leave. I mean, yeah,
So-
I mean, we're not,
So I just wanted to voice my opinion about it and let you know how I feel.
Have you applied for the budget program?
I
Put you
have,
on the same payment every month for 12 months?
I don't like the budget program because when it comes to our winter months, it usually goes down quite greatly. I'm usually only paying about $100 a month in the winter. So I'm very interested to see what it's going to be this winter.
It's just a way to have peace of mind for 12 months while we're in this gas flux though. That's why I'm asking if you've thought about applying for it.
Thank you.
thank you.
If I'll mention to you the same thing I've mentioned on Facebook to others, that if you want to give me a call, my cell number is there or my office number. I'd be happy to look at your usage and see if I can help understand. In a few cases, we've seen cases where there's something weird with the usage, and I think the utility wants to help understand what's going on.
That in the month of September, I did not even have use of my bathroom. So I had a whole room where I could not use my toilet, my shower, or my electric in there. So I don't know how my usage was so much less in September than in August, but yet my bill was so much more expensive when I didn't even use a room that I would use on a regular basis.
You have 2 bathrooms.
No, I was going up to Lake Worth Beach using the public restrooms
Oh, okay, well,
for a full 4 weeks.
sorry about that.
Madam Mayor, if I may. In the July bills, we gave notice
Right.
with the newsletter that said, why is my bill high? Point out that our effective September 1, our total bill for the 1,000 kilowatt hour customer went up by 16.25%, something like that, about 16%.
Right.
So that did take place. But a number of people are feeling that, prior speakers talking about the impact on their bills. One of those happened, I know for a fact, there was a billing error where the customer had been underbilled for many cycles, so many years. So there's each story is unique, but overall, the rate for the 1,000 kilowatt hour residential customer did cause a 16% increase in the overall bill. And of course, unfortunately, August, September, those are the high used months. So folks in those homes that use tremendous amounts of energy are going to feel it the most. And that's.
Yeah, 60%, not.
I'll also point out that I did go back and do some research to see how we done versus prior years. So if you go back and look at actual data, in 2017, we were ranked 24th in the state in terms of our rates. Out of 38 utilities that report rates, we were ranked 24th. This September, 6th. In August, we were 6th, correct.
Good thing, right?
Right, we went from 24 to 6. That doesn't mean we went down, right, necessarily. It means that we've gone up by a lot less than everybody else. So still, doesn't mean it's okay to have high electric rates, right? But that's the reality where we are. And I think if you look at the August numbers, we were probably 4th or 5th, and we're using 12-month averages, right? Everybody's adjusting their rates and bringing them, but we went from 24th in September of 17 to 6th in September of 2022.
Is that municipal power or
All.
over?
All the municipals, including Florida Power Light, Tampa, Duke, JEA, OUC, Tallahassee, all the big ones, and we're in there too.
And
We're 6th.
pretty much on par with those rates at where we are now.
Our monthly rate just went up, so it's pulling our average up, but their adjustments are coming.
They're gonna, right,
Their adjustments are coming, and their exposure to natural gas is much higher than ours. And the numbers are big.
Great.
So that doesn't mean it's okay.
Right.
It's not a feel-good thing, but I just want to put it in perspective that we, both this commission and prior commissions, we had rate parity, which had an impact on the balance sheet, had an impact on our reserves, which we're still recovering from to push the rates down. and we're recovering from that. But nonetheless, in spite of having raised 88 to $100 million of capital for our improvement program, we're down to 6th in the state.
Thank you.
And we're trying.
We are.
I want to be the lowest.
We want to be the lowest. Everybody wants
Right.
us to be the lowest. You'll get full support on that. Tom Conboy.
Tom Conboy, business owner at 30 South M Street. Madam Mayor, honorable commissioners. Planning. Planning is a key piece to directing the city. And the lady that just spoke before me mentioned how quickly these rates came upon us. It was like almost overnight. And my electricity bill has gone up for 2 months, very, very high, shockingly high. Commissioner McVoy has been pushing solar for the last 30 years, as long as I've known him. And while our solar plant was a little bit more expensive per kilowatt hour, remember that was done a long time ago. And then we went anti-solar in the city. We actually had a moratorium on solar in this city. The cities or the utilities that are heavy in solar did not have this impact from natural gas. Natural gas, we've always had lower natural gas prices here in the United States because of the exporting of natural gas. It's very hard to do because it's extremely explosive. And I'm not convinced that we're not going to have some major bombs go off now that we're exporting natural gas.
You just came here to cheer us up.
Yeah, well, just letting you know. So what I want to say though is for residents, we can get solar on our house now. The moratorium is gone, and that's really valuable. Commissioner McVoy pointed out how natural gas is going to continue to go up. Solar continues to go down. How can we as a city make it easier for people to put solar on their roofs, right? Can we lower the permit fees? Can we make the permitting process less expensive and not cost our city as much and not cost our residents as much? Because that's one of the factors of the costs of putting solar on your house. And we can address that. The other thing is energy reduction, right? There are a lot of ways to get your energy costs down by buying new appliances and or adjusting existing appliances. Can we get more emphasis on reducing electricity use in the city? Because that would help us. And remember that we take $4 million a year from the electric utility, I believe, where it's a lot. Why couldn't we wait to implement these price increases until, say, October, when we got cooler and the actual electricity use was not quite as high, so that the peak numbers didn't hit people so hard? And then it would be moving in, because remember, we are the city and
I'm sorry,
we
your
have
time is up.
bigger budgets.
Your time is up. But we just say your last sentence again before she couldn't.
Okay. So we are the city and we have big budgets. So we have a little bit more room than your average person that has to get, well, we just gave $13 million to the Gulf Stream.
No, we did not give $13 million to the Gulf Stream. Let's not go there. Okay. Okay. Peggy Fisher, last but not least.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. One, someone needs to explain the change on comment to Ms. Jennings, because most of what she said was wrong. Two, as the board of the electric utilities, you're supposed to operate with the same rules as commission rules, which means 30 minutes for a discussion, respect, not having all this back and forth, not going over, expanding on time. I said in here in July, when you first did the September 1 vote, you all spent an hour and a half talking about this. And you didn't even have a full motion on the table. Because Commissioner Malega tried to make a motion, no one would second it, which went on with an hour and a half of discussion. You have to, realize people are watching, people are spending their time to sit here and listening to you all go back and forth, repeating the same things is tiring. We get it. We get it when we open our bills. I added up so far this year, you've increased PCA over almost $31. And you did it. You said at the beginning of the year it was going to be every quarter. You've been honest about that. But on that July meeting, when you finally approved the motion, you had 4 items you wanted to get done. First one was bring back the payment plan that was in place during COVID. See nothing about that. Second one was a commercial budget program. See nothing about that. Third item, surprise, is on the agenda. Fourth item was on the agenda. So it doesn't make sense. Either you want to focus on education, as you talked about at that July meeting, which getting something in your utility bill, most people don't pay any attention to it. That's not how you're going to communicate to people. You've got to talk to them. And how many of you have had a public meeting in your district to talk to people? How many of you have had a town hall meeting to talk to the people that you represent in your district? Probably one. That's what I would say, is one would be my bet. You all need to do your jobs as the board of the electric utility that you want to run and represent the people and not grandstand to everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Okay. Now we have the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Oh, Sheila, are you there? Hello.
Yes,
I just want to make sure before we motion the approval that there was a mistake that I had caught and I had mentioned it to Melissa.
for the August 30th minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
I will check on it, Commissioner Malika.
Okay,
I will reach out to her and check on it.
thank
So-
you.
So do you want to, what do you want to do with that? But
Not approving them for now. There was an error there, so it was on last week. And I hadn't, Melissa said she would take care of it, but I didn't get an update in minutes.
so move it to the next agenda.
Is that okay?
Well, Madam Mayor, I was wondering, could you make the correction
Right, that-
through the meeting
Record.
That's
on
fine.
record
Whatever you
and then
guys want.
approve the meeting
Absolutely.
minute?
If the record can reflect. It shows Commissioner Maliga via Zoom. I was in attendance at that meeting.
Not a
Melissa-
problem.
Thank
I will
you.
correct it.
Motion to,
Okay, motion to approve as amended.
correct.
Do I have one?
Yes, motion to approve as read
Thank you. Do I have a
by
second?
Commissioner Malika.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
Can you let the clerk know who seconded that?
I believe it was.
It was a tie. I don't know who was ahead.
Y'all compete for that second all the time. I think it was Roy, did you second
We
We're
both,
one of them.
I don't.
I'll give it
it? Okay.
You can have it.
He can have it. He can have the second. We'll give the second to Mr. McBoy right now. Okay, now, unfinished business. The integrated resource plan update.
Yes, Madam Mayor, good evening. We scheduled for tonight an update on the integrated resource plan. This is not yet final, but it's pretty far along. I'd say probably 90%. And we'll be having at least one more meeting with the advisory board was the plan before we issue the final report. But I don't expect that the results will change dramatically from what's here. So it's important to bring it out. We do have available to join us Greg Turk and Kathy Jones from Horizons Energy to walk you through where the plan starts or stands right now. So at this point, if Greg's out there.
Are you out there, Greg?
I am. Can you hear
All
me?
right. Yeah, and what about Kathy?
I'm
Is
here.
Kathy- All right, great.
We can hear you both.
Great.
Thank you
And-
very much.
And my understanding is, Greg, you guys are going to drive the presentation from the share function.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to
Turn it
you.
over. Take it away.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So the purpose of this discussion is to provide an update to where we are with the integrated resource plan, as the utility director had mentioned, and tonight's presentation will focus on one specific scenario, an important scenario, the reference case. However, we'll also allude to the other scenarios and sensitivities that we've been performing and documenting as part of the integrated resource plan. So we'll step through some results around the reference case, and we will also point out key findings of the integrated resource plan to date and talk about a proposed direction for moving forward. So we started, just briefly by way of background, we started the project in June of this year. We last met in August, although we've met with the advisory board a couple or a few times. In June, July, and August, we worked in conjunction with the utility staff to gather various information that was required for the integrated resource plan. And then after gathering the appropriate information, we then, starting in late August and throughout September and into October, simulated a variety of runs. These runs incorporate information about the existing resources and the existing demand of the city. Things like contracts, cost to produce power, the size of resources, how they operate, and so on. And then we also incorporate, as part of the plan, information about the larger region, the larger power system within which Lake Worth operates. And that is, we capture that through by forecasting the underlying fuel prices, energy, congestion, capacity, importantly, capacity prices, emissions, and other factors. We put all this information into a large power planning model called Encompass. It's one of the most widely used tools in North America for doing integrated resource plans. And out of that, the model provides direction on the least cost set of resources over time. Our planning period is from 2023 through 2050. We went out that far in order to incorporate the requirement or stated objective to get the utility to 100% carbon free. And so what we'll show you is some of the views that we would typically use to understand the need of the utility over time, as well as the what we're seeing as the economic choices that appear to be best under different scenarios. So this graph is years, again, that time frame 23 through 50, as a function of megawatts, where megawatts indicate the size of the power system within the city of Lake Worth Beach. And so the dark blue line here represents the peak demand of the city, which is basically a little less than 100 megawatts plus a planning reserve. A very standard component to this type of planning is to plan to the peak plus a reserve level. The standard reserve level within municipals and cooperatives in Florida is a 15% reserve margin. And so this line here represents what we're planning to in our reference case. The line goes up at 0.5% compounded annual growth per year. This is per the direction of the utility director and his staff. So this is the need of the utility in terms of capacity over time. It's going up slightly, and it starts out at about 112 megawatts. The orange line or line segments or whatever represents the existing resources of Lake Worth Beach, and it changes over time depending on which existing resources are able to contribute to capacity over time. So early on, what we see is a drop due to part of Tom G. Smith. We see the increases due to the FMPA contracts that we were just seeing the presentation on. We see a large drop. Part of that is Stanton, and part of that is another steam unit at Tom G. Smith. And so by 2027, the utility has a little over 40 megawatts of firm capacity and essentially a requirement of about 115 to 120 megawatts. So this is what we would look towards as the need of the utility over time. Now, the utility could fill this in with what's called a supplemental contract. We think of it as the market price for power within Central South Florida. And that's one way you could go. And we want to compare that. That's one of the options actually in the plan, is to not acquire any additional resources and then compare that to the value and cost of developing resources within the city or through contracts. So I'm going to show you a slightly different view of this graph. And this is our base case resource plan. And it's the same basic parameters as we start, and that is it's the same peak plus reserve requirement at the top, the black line, and now the orange area represents that same area that we saw before for the Lake Worth Beach existing resources, and that embeds the FMPA contracts along with St. Lucie and other resources. But in addition, what we did is we're utilizing this model called Encompass to give us the type and timing of additional resources that are economic in the system. The resources that we looked to introduce to the model as generic or potential resources included two different types of solar. The solar PPA, these would be like the FMPA contracts where they come forth with a price and a term for those contracts. So that's based on market information we have today or in the next few years. We have another flavor of solar, which we call solar entitlement. These are meant to be the follow-on possible solar resources that the city could obtain. And we assume that the city could obtain those similarly as the Stanton or the St. Lucie partial ownership contracts that are in place today. So in addition to solar, we look to possibly add combustion turbine resources, behind the meter solar resources, solar utility scale battery resources. RICE are internal combustion engine resources. Combined cycles are efficient natural gas-based resources, and demand response. So we have in there a demand response program based on estimated costs that's provided by Florida Power and Light in one of their causes before the Florida Regulatory Commission, and that became the basis of our demand response here. So it's kind of like a blender, or where we abdicate the optimal economics or least cost. We throw all these resources in the blender, and the model comes out and actually tells us the economic best resources for a set of economic or for a set of future conditions. Keep in mind, this is our reference case. We've done the set of cases that we've done in support of this planning is about 72 basic cases, and we'll look at the range of those in just a second. But I want to, and we also assume that the city can enter in, just as they've done with, say, St. Lucie or other, the FMPA contracts, you can enter into partial ownership shares of given technologies if they're the most economic. So I want to take just a minute to explain the resources that were built under this plan. And I want to talk about it in terms of 3 different timeframes, 2023 through 2030. We think of this near term as what we call an action plan. This is the near term where you need to make decisions or think through and investigate more about the economics of studying additional things that may be available to you. Okay, so that's 23 through 30, 31 through 40 is what we'll call the intermediate term. What we see happening in the base case, in the action plan, is a purchase of an additional amount of solar resource, and then the beginning of a variety of other resources coming into play. And the reason why these resources come into play in the 30s in the intermediate time frame is because the value of capacity, we believe, is going to go up significantly. Capacity will be expensive. We believe that's because due to reduction in total carbon emissions and the increase in variable renewable generation, primarily from solar, that the value of capacity will come at a premium. And as a result, we find that the city looks to obtain firm combination of demand response, combustion turbine, batteries, and additional solar entitlement in the 2030s. Okay, and then in the 2040s, 41 through 50, we basically call that path to zero carbon. So in that case, what happens in 43 is the retirement of St. Lucie Solar, the retirement of those two of a couple of the solar projects in 43, 44 timeframe. So once again, there's an open, an additional need for capacity and associated energy. Okay, so in the early years, we're seeing the need for supplemental capacity. That's this kind of blank or hashed area, and we see the need for supplemental capacity in these late years. It's the most economic according to the model and our assumptions for this particular scenario for capacity and energy. What we're seeing as resources acquired and developed is some amount of solar PPA in the acquired very early in the 2024 timeframe in the reference case, and then the ability to acquire batteries in the late 2020s. And hopefully that's consistent with our pricing is consistent with what we've seen traded in the marketplace, as well as what we foresee the capital costs in the future for solar and other solar, batteries, combustion turbine, and other technologies. So I'll just stop right there and see what questions you might have.
I have I just have a simple question about the graph. Just looking at the light green solar PPA, I felt like we were buying a fixed amount. So I don't understand the variability in that.
Why it goes down like this?
It decreases. Yeah.
Okay, a very good question. So we have a functionality built into the model called ELCC. It's equivalent load carrying capability. And what that does is it tracks how much, so this is capacity, that you get a constant amount of energy, but its ability to contribute to capacity does decline over time. And that what happens is additional amounts of solar within the city then shifts the solar to the peak of the Lake Worth system after solar, the net peak, later and later in the day. And so the amount of capacity is decreased, even though the amount of total solar energy is held constant through the contract. It would vary by weather, in a given year and so on, but it's fairly constant.
So Greg, this is Ed, let me try this too. Effectively what happens is you add more and more solar to the system. Your peak needs for more power get pushed to later and later in the day when the sun goes down. So you get less solar production. The other thing to keep in mind or to keep in mind, but to point out for people too, is that when you're entering into the power purchase agreements, it's for a fixed amount over a period of 20 years. There is some slight degradation around 0.1 to 0.3% in output from the system as it grows older, but you buy a block over time. What we would be doing early on is buying more than we need for some times of the year, but knowing that we can fully use it during other times of the year. So we're going to overbuy slightly. So we'll be actually selling some solar into the market. But this graph is focusing on how much we might need in any one year, but you can't change your entitlement under the project every single year. So we're going to buy a big chunk, use most of it, most of the year, use all of it some of the year, and the excess will sell.
Other questions or comments about this graph before I move
I
on?
think Mr. McVoy may have a comment or a question.
Thank you. A couple questions. This base case graph that you've got up, is that model output, or is that basically your starting assumption of the lay of the land over that period of time as an input to the model?
Okay, so this would be a good way to look at the input. We start with a need for resources must be met, and there are existing resources in the system. We could have done economic retirements or something like that, but we felt that this was the amount of firm capacity. The difference between these two is what it comes out of the model. So everything between the black line and the orange area is model derived.
Okay, one thing that would be, I think, helpful to us to look at or to see a different way of presenting it would be a time series graph like this that simply had percentage of carbon emitting energy production versus non-carbon emitting energy production, and see what that graph looked like over time. It's going to be the same information. It's going to be summing, like presumably the battery part, the solar part, the demand response would sum as non-carbon emitting, and a lot of the other things would stay as carbon emitting, so that we can kind of see from a policy planning point of view, how is that shift looking?
Okay.
I think it's also important for the public to know, and certainly the commissioners, that not all energy devices give you the same product. So for example, solar, 36.5 megawatts of solar doesn't give you the same capacity as 36.5 megawatts of fossil fuel. That doesn't mean we should build 36.5 megawatts of fossil fuel, but they perform very differently. The biggest difference being that one doesn't work at night and the other does. One provides spinning reserve and momentum, if you will, the inertia to keep the system to spin through issues. You can regulate voltage, do a lot of things with it. You need both in the mix. You can't just go completely one or the other. You need both. So they're not always directly replaceable one for the other. What we've tried to do here, we set the overall goal, and I'm assuming it was discussed. I ran out to get a sweater because I was freezing here in the seat. I'm right on the vent. Is the overall goal was to reduce CO2 emissions on a certain glide, I call it a glide path. And I'm assuming we touched on that.
We have not. It's sorry. There's a succeeding graph that's going to address that.
Okay. So the whole point of this is, how do we meet our capacity requirements? How do we meet our reserve requirements? How do we deliver energy to our customers? And at the same time, making sure that we do that on the CO2 glide path that we want. So that's one of the controlling factors in this model. If we only cared about economics, we might do something different, but we care about the environment. So this model is constrained by achieving certain CO2 reductions by certain dates. And that's what's helping to drive the model.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at with, I'd like to see the data, broken out just into those two categories, CO2 emitting and non-CO2 emitting. That would help us see. And I think there are kind of a number of ways to approach this sort of modeling. One would be to say, well, and it's a little bit what Ed's alluding to with the glide path. Hey, we have a target to do certain things over a period, and we want to know what would it cost us to do that. That's a little bit different way of setting up your optimization model. But I think it is worth looking at, because I think what we're seeing in the community is People don't like high prices. That's obvious. Nobody wants to pay more for stuff. But the feelings of people is a little more complex. If you said, well, would you trade a slightly higher price for a fixed price over 20 years? And basically saying, look, we know that fossil fuel prices are going to go up. If we go a little higher on our renewable ones, put more investment early on, but we get a fixed price, you know what you're going to be paying. We're not going to be coming back to you with, hey, we need to raise the rates because natural gas went up. I think having some model output that would let people and let the commission look at those alternatives, I think that might be a way to look at some of this.
Well, just want to point out too, and just not to be completely on, trying to get to zero natural gas is going to be very, very difficult until there are very low priced, massive amounts of batteries built.
Yep.
So
Storage
effectively, we have to carry the city from sunset to sunrise with energy that we've stored into a battery, right? Plus the baseline of nuclear, which is our 22 megawatts, right? So you're going to have to carry, we are going to have to carry some amount of energy on batteries. That's a massive exercise. So to keep that in mind, that can't be done today. There's not enough, we can't afford it, right? Do that today. You're talking about putting hundreds of thousands of megawatt hours into batteries in a small city trying to find that footprint. But this is telling us, based on the economics of how those technologies are maturing and coming down in cost, when that is likely to happen. And that's very positive.
It looks pretty optimistic for batteries, like it's really going up.
I'm big on batteries. I'm optimistic, and I've said often that I want to be among the first to deploy batteries in the municipal market and not find out 2 or 3 years later that we should have done it some time ago. I want to be leading, just like we led with bigger commitments to solar than anybody else. Now the projects got slowed down, but we want to be out in front.
Great. Thank you.
And I think clearly batteries is a key part of it. I think it's probably important to make that storage. And there's no question what Ed just said. If you have a variable generation source, that's very different from what the industry is used to. Industries are used to, you fire up a generator, you feed it whatever it needs to burn, and it runs constant for forever. And you very slowly crank it up in the winter or the summer, depending where you are. But other than that, you've got steady. They're known in the industry as VERs, variable energy resources, and the industry is working very hard to figure out how to work with that. Storage is the key piece. Batteries is clearly going to be a part of it. May not be the only part. There's other technology, and the pressures on those technologies to innovate is huge. And so let's keep ourselves open on that. But 100% agreed that unless you've got some sort of energy storage, you're going to have some degree of
When are
burning
we
something.
revisiting this? How often do we revisit this?
That's a very good question. So the large investor-owned utilities effectively do this annually, and they submit their plans to the Florida Public Service Commission. If you do the research, we can certainly point you to them. They're called this 10-year site plan. It's really an integrated resource plan. They call it a 10-year site plan. We did ours in 2018, was the first one that I'm aware of and put done that I could, nobody in staff knew of one being done. So we did the first one in 18. It focused on supply side. It didn't deal with demand side. This one is integrated. You should do this, I would say, for us, every 4 to 5 years. It's probably not longer than that, but to do it every year is a very expensive exercise. And our load isn't changing by that much every year that would make sense to do it every year. It'd be a big expense, but we're on a 4-year cycle right now, and I think it's appropriate.
Hopefully we'll know more in 4 years about storage capabilities. I was reading somewhere about linear and exponential growth, and that there's like a bias where people try to make things, like especially with new technology, they try to put linear growth towards it, but usually new technologies, once they pick up, they grow exponentially. But right now, I don't know that we can rely on that.
What this model is not taking into account is let's call this macro, and then what it's not doing is micro. So what do I mean by that? There may be unique situations within our own distribution system where a battery could make sense earlier than the macroeconomic loop might tell you. So what I want to understand from this, at what point, if batteries drop to some price, should we say, I don't need to do another plan, let's grab a battery, right? Let's not find out let's say we wait 4 years and we find out, gee, 2 years ago, we should have bought a battery. So there may be some operating situations that we have in our system that could be alleviated and made better if we had a battery sooner rather than later. That might not make sense from a macroeconomic point of view, but might make sense from a micro operational point of view.
A little more adaptable.
And more adaptable. So, and there's some things that could suddenly change. For example, the ability to deploy battery with an investment tax credit with a direct payment option to the municipal entity, if we chose to go that way. I'm not sure that makes sense to do. That's not necessarily coupled with solar. Up until the IRA, the battery had to be coupled with a solar project to get the investment tax credit, which made it cost effective. You can now decouple those, is my understanding. So, and if we wanted to, we could get a direct payment of the equivalent of a tax benefit. The problem with that is that it causes us to borrow money to build the project as opposed to just paying for it through a PPA. But the bottom line is that you can now decouple it and maybe be able to use it locally, maybe deploy it sooner. What the resource plan is looking at is the macro perspective. But if we see an opportunity, we want to jump on it.
Hey, did you have another question?
I did about, I know Commissioner Diaz did, but I was just wondering about the imports, like the shaded area with all the dots. So from now to 2031, what are we, is that kind of unknown? We're just filling in that space, however.
What import says it's cheaper to buy capacity under contract. For example, under our supplemental agreement with OUC today, which could be with anybody, it's currently with OUC. We buy capacity, we buy it. Excuse me?
And that is what relies on natural gas.
When you operate it at the moment, it would rely on natural gas. That's correct.
So if we look at this from now to 2031, we don't have any, we're actually, it looks like more, potentially more.
So I think what we need to do is look at this and saying this is a capacity plan. So we need to have a certain amount of capacity to make sure that we can produce energy. So the way I explain capacity to folks is capacity is the reason you don't put your finger in the outlet. Energy is what happens when you do that. So we have to have a certain amount of capacity there. So we have to buy capacity so that when we need to make energy, it can make energy for us. What those dotted areas say, those are periods of time when looking at the economics of what capacity is selling for in the market to buy it under a contract versus building capacity of your own or buying a portion of a plant. It is currently cheaper and predicted to be cheaper to continue to buy the capacity the way we've been buying it. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't add solar. So we're going to be buying 20 more megawatts of solar, 36 and a half, and then hopefully buying another 20 above that, which is going to give us even more. But solar doesn't give you the same capacity value as a gas plant. It's not directly replaced. It can help defer and offset the size of the gas plant you build one day, but it doesn't replace it 100% without coupling with a battery.
Oh, right.
Which then takes the price way up. Of course, the emissions come down. What the Encompass model does is it takes those into account and balances them and say, hey, this is the optimal path forward for the glide path that you want to have for CO2 emissions. So this is what you're trying to achieve for CO2 emissions. This is the best way to get there based on how technology is maturing, the gas prices that we've seen, where gas prices could go, what capacity is selling for in the market, the structure of the contracts we've been able to negotiate, which we'll renegotiate again within 3 years, that type of stuff.
Thank you. Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, so we don't have to revisit the IRP every year, but in terms of improvements when it comes to technology, like Commissioner Stokes mentioned, storage, there's some seriously impressive improvements recently, at least on the home storage side. So, there's correlation with the utilities that do this every year, right? Like we can kind of look at their 10-year plans, their IRP, and see how they're changing as the technology changes. It kind of give us almost like a heads up or somewhat expect a little bit of what we can expect when we do revisit this in 5 years, right? If there's something like
we actually did that.
Yeah.
So if you look at the last resource plan, it didn't call for 36.5 megawatts of solar. It didn't. However, when we saw the price crash, and I say crash, when we saw the very low prices come in, we'd say, wow, earlier than we thought, we should grab a bunch more. So we went from I think it was 20 megawatts or 10 megawatts, and we jumped up with another 26 and a half because that price was just too good to pass up. And it was way ahead of when the 2018 model had predicted that would happen. So we grabbed it.
Yeah.
So when you see something that shocks the market and the price shifts, you say, particularly in something that we wanted anyway, which was more solar, I wouldn't come in and say, gee, coal got really cheap. We bought another 10 megawatts of coal, right? I'm not saying we would do that, but within the bounds of what we were trying to achieve, which was to reduce our CO2 emissions, sure, price change, we jumped at it. We didn't say, oh, let's do another resource plan and see what it says. It was an opportunity and we grabbed it.
Right, because you never know, maybe next year, Commissioner McVoy's little experiment jumps into some impressive battery patent that, really
It's like a bomb.
exponentially, is going to help us. So we
I
can
think-
keep an eye on others.
I think it's a matter of balance too. And when you look at this thing, so let's all go back in time, back to the polyester suit and the big fat ties. We're sitting here in the 1980s, right? And there's a fantastic opportunity to buy into something called St. Lucie Nuclear. How much do you want? Oh, I don't. The people who sat in those seats in the 1980s said, we'll take 25% of FMPA's share, which is now 22 megawatts. We'll take it. If they had taken 100%, let's assume for the moment that the folks in those seats with entirely different hairdos and ties and suits, right? And cars had said, we're going to go 100% nuclear. That wouldn't have gone over very well in the 1980s, right? Or the 1990s. But today, you know how much natural gas price risk you'd have? Zero. Would it have been the right decision? It depends on the day in which you ask the question, right? Or the year. So what this is about is coming up with a market basket, a bundle that gives you options and doesn't close off other doors. So if somebody had said do 100% nuclear back then, it would have closed the doors off to solar because you wouldn't need it. You'd have 100% nuclear. If they had said do no nuclear, you'd be scrambling with even higher PCA adjustments than you're looking at today, much higher, probably 2 or 3 times that. So it's a balance of resources that gets you there. And you also don't want to commit to one unit. Let's say they had said 100% of our power is going to come from that specific nuclear unit. Let's say it had a serious problem or lost its operating permit. Now what do you do? Well, you scramble in the market at very high prices in the moment, right? So it's about having predictability, about having a balance in the mix by saying, what's my overall goal? What am I trying to get to? I'm trying to get to much lower emissions than I have today. I want clean air, I want blue skies, I want clean water. How am I going to get there?
Stability.
And stability, correct.
Okay, thank you. Are we at the end of the presentation? No. Could we be? Let's continue.
Is the mayor, would you like to let me know, is there a time period that you'd like to be completed? I can speed it up as needed.
Yeah, you pick up the pace just a little bit. We're in rabbit holes tonight, but if you could keep going, that would be great.
I think we've never really have a workshop for electric stuff, but we might want to.
Madam Clerk,
Yes,
How
Madam
long-
Mayor.
how long have we been talking about this?
You guys have 7 minutes and 41 seconds left, 39 now.
This is the biggest chunk of our city budget. It is the biggest issue chronically, as long as I've been involved in politics in the city. It's our biggest reputation, our electric prices.
Right.
I would suggest that we take the time we need to make sure that we all thoroughly understand what we're looking at and make good decisions. This is pretty significant stuff. You only do your integrated resource plan at best, maybe once every 4 years. So I would not encourage people to rush it. Let's let them go ahead and not worry about 30 minutes on this.
Okay.
The term rabbit holes I find offensive.
Sorry, it's just.
I
This
is
I think
pretty
what you're
big.
saying is true. So it sounds like, although we have 7 minutes left, it sounds like we should call it, this should be a workshop on this issue. Yes?
I suggest we keep.
More conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just keep going now.
Well, we have
But-
so much more on the agenda tonight, and we really, 30 minutes is pretty much our limit to go to a workshop.
I wonder if we can wrap this up and then we have a workshop next week, if we can continue. There's only one item on the workshop next week. If we could, we've had workshops where we've had 2 items. I think this is important. I think every question that we've been asking is relevant to the topic, which doesn't always happen. And I think it would be a shame if the commission couldn't all get in the same room at some point and really dig into these really critical decisions, but that's what workshops are for.
When is the workshop next week?
Is it next Thursday?
November 7th.
7. Yeah,
But we never
That's on the
plan
housing
stuff for electric
crisis.
utility stuff.
right. No, we haven't. The one on the 7th is housing crisis.
Correct.
So do we want to do, I mean, a workshop is, you know, do we want to do 2 serious topics at one workshop?
Can we let this gentleman finish the presentation first and then make that decision?
Yeah.
I mean, you can run through it, but we have more, you know, it sounds like we have more conversation. So about how long will it take you to finish the presentation, sir?
Make offer. I can do it in 5 minutes if you like. I can do it in 15 if you like.
Well, I think given our time frame, we should go for the 5.
Very good.
Because we're going to be looking at this in a more extensive way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will move on from the base case resource plan and suggest that that's just one scenario and one sensitivity. And what we do in the IRP is we look at a range of scenarios and sensitivities. Again, a total of 72. And depending on the inputs to the model, in each of these cases, you get a different output. However, we are seeing a level of robustness and commonness that I'll show you in the last couple of slides. I want to show you a second view of this, and this is the base case with a lower purchase power price. So our base PPA was $40, this is $35, and the big takeaways there are that the amount of the PPA take goes from about 7 megawatts to about 20 megawatts. If you can acquire a $35 PPA versus a 40. And we're showing that mostly here just as a means of demonstrating that that variations from these sensitivities and scenarios give us different outcomes. Here's our view of carbon emissions. Did somebody, was there a comment?
Yes, that was it. I was just saying, now you see how I got the 20. Thank you.
Okay, so in this slide, what we're doing is we're demonstrating that the ability of the city to get to zero carbon is going to be dependent in the absence of some technological breakthrough that occurs between now and the 2040s is going to be dependent on the ability to acquire energy capacity and lower carbon emitting sources from that energy and capacity. So the blue line over here represents a trajectory consistent with Florida Power and Light's stated goal for emissions out of their system, terminating at 0 by 2050. And if you follow those purchases that we saw in the base case or reference case, here's City of Lake Worth. If you don't have high emission reductions of your neighbors, you're going to have a much harder time. You make huge reductions out through the 2020s, but in past the retirement of St. Lucie, you're going to have a hard time. That's the point of this graph. This graph gets at showing you under a variety of sensitivities how your decisions, either decisions or optimal outcomes could change as a result of the environment or what you want to assume in the plan. And in the benefit, in the interest of time, I will just point out a couple of them. A couple of things that we're seeing is that there's a GT resource that seems to be economic and that may be a viable thing to look at as a life extension. We assume a 10-year life extension. If the city simply relies on a supplemental contract that we believe is at market, it will cost $52 million more. We forced in the ocean current as a one-time sensitivity, and it showed up as a $37 million more based on our current estimates of capital cost. So that's just some of the outcomes. Here we're showing very briefly, we're showing that action plan timeframe for solar PPA and demand response. And again, depending on our assumptions under the The reference case at 7 megawatts under a $35 PPA, it's $20. Under some cases, like an $18 carbon, it's $0, and so on. By the year 2030, what we're looking at is a combination of batteries and utility scale solar that comes on board to provide a combination of firm as well as energy resources. And we can see how much either batteries and utility scale solar that we look to acquire in that time frame. These are installed costs separate from the firm costs that we were seeing in the earlier graph. So this is called this is how many megawatts that you buy in $1 per kW installed. So the two things I want to show are we have a variety of findings. Clearly, Lake Worth Beach needs additional resources over time. And as we saw in that cost savings graph, acquiring those resources saves money. There's some amount of economic PPA. The optimal amount varies by scenario and pricing, particularly the PPA. Zero carbon attainment out in that 2040 timeframe is highly dependent on import carbon rate. We suggest that the city look at a GT2 life extension, a life extension on the GT2 unit, because it's relatively cheap capacity at a time that capacity is valuable if the economics of the estimated overhaul take place. There's an in-city project that we evaluated as provided by the utility director, and that actually comes out more costly than the utility scale, as was being suggested earlier in this meeting. So by way of portfolio, in the action plan timeframe, evaluate and entertain seriously some amount of solar PPA, further evaluate the economics of demand response, and further evaluate the life extension. We believe that these other technologies will take place in order to meet energy capacity and environmental needs in the 2031 through 40 timeframe, and from 41 to 50, there's going to be significant pressure for the city to meet a zero carbon target. And the best way that we see today is through purchases of low carbon energy from outside the city. And that is a 5-minute summary.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Greg and Kathy.
Could you, I had one question back. Could you go back once? I think it's one, it might be, yeah, the import carbon rate. Can you remind us of what that is again?
That's this slide over here. So this trajectory, the blue line is Florida Power and Light saying, this is what we believe the carbon intensity will be of our system from 23 through 2050. We evaluated the actual all of Florida carbon emission rate in pounds per megawatt hour. And if it's much more like, it's much more indicative of the state as a whole, it's almost a ×2 higher carbon level of pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour of carbon. So if you're buying megawatt hours, you're actually also implicitly buying tons of carbon or pounds of carbon.
Right.
Okay, so if the state doesn't work very hard, or who you're buying power from doesn't work very hard to reduce CO2 emissions, you're inheriting a very tough problem out in the 2040s to get to zero, because you're inheriting inherently higher levels of CO2 associated with that energy.
So what it's effectively saying is that trying to get to zero completely on our own is going to be very, very difficult, that we're really relying on the purchases from the market. Now, we believe that because of the announcements that the other major players in the state have made about where they're going, that I'll use the term almost riding their coattails down that CO2 emissions curve is going to be the key. We're not going to be able to build emissions-free generation technology on our own at the scale and cost that they are working at. So we're going to be relying on purchases of very, very low carbon fuel sources to achieve that. The
For a portion of the portfolio.
For a portion of the portfolio, correct. The big issue will be in 2043, which is the current expiration of the St. Lucie operating license. There's a big hurdle there because that's a few 100,000 megawatt hours a year
Yeah.
that are zero carbon, right? That would have to be replaced in a hurry. There's nothing we're going to decide today, which is going to change that, right? But we're thinking ahead for the people who sit in these seats 15 to 20 years from now, saying, okay, that'll be a real issue to confront.
God
And
bless.
one- Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, the time has elapsed.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we need to go to workshop on this just to learn. This is complicated stuff. Some of us understand it better than others. Do we feel that we need a workshop on this group? I see Mr. Roy shaking his head. Yes. Yeah.
I do. I'd also, if it's going to be its own workshop, I'd like to also look at a variety of different rate structures.
Issues about electricity.
Yes.
And Mayor, if I may suggest that the EUAB, the advisory board, be invited to attend as well.
Yes.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Just for clarity, are we requesting this to be its own individual workshop and not add on to our November 7th?
I think, yes. I
Oh.
think because we do want to get into, I mean, we have a lot of issues with the electricity and the rates, everything right now.
Right. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
And I think we ought to, and I appreciate the suggestion to do a workshop, appreciate the suggestion to do it as its own self-standing one. I think we ought to consider as part of the agenda of that workshop, moving toward a statement from us of our mission for the utility, our objectives for the utility, so that we're clear, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do for consumers? What are we trying to do for carbon emissions? Move more in that direction, getting some clarity.
Commissioner Diaz.
I like the idea of the mission statement, if you will, but also to that workshop, I would love to work in the discussion of removing any kind of limitations to rooftop solar, and how that could help out.
I
with
think
this.
we did eliminate the limitation.
More, there's a cap.
More to go on.
There's some more on that needs to happen, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to come up with a date on that one. Okay, great. Now the next one we have up is, what new business N is now new business A. Thank you. Appreciate that. I would like to take about a 5 to 7 minute break.
Yeah.
So let's take, it's 8:04, let's come back at 10 minutes from now.
So for
8:14.
Craig Shepard
Ladies and gentlemen, lady.
Thank you, Craig and Kathy.
and Craig will be first on when we come back.
This is fine. I didn't know, I had a number of these guys. They kind of. It's good. I hope it's good. Yeah, table one. You could argue. I had them numbered. I was trying to keep this table from splitting in 2 pages. That's how I
Thank you. Okey doke. It is now 8:18. Madam Clerk, are we back? Can we get back?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have reconvened.
Okay, great. Get back to what we once belonged. In the old days. Okay, now we have moved the last two new business items to the front two new business items. So we're starting with item N. For those of you that are listening, which is the purchase power cost adjustment, PCA. And we're going to ask Mr. Liberty to enlighten us on this.
Okay, I'll take a deep breath.
I'm taking.
I went and got my vest here because I was,
Again, could somebody kick that on a little bit? Just one or two. I'm warm.
I'm warmer now that I put this sweater on. Okay, Madam Mayor, for the record, again, at Liberty Electric Utility Director, here to talk about the PCA adjustment. For the folks at home and listening or maybe watching on YouTube a day from now, the power purchase cost adjustment PCA is how we recover the dollars that we spend to buy power on a wholesale basis and pass through to our customers. This is not our base rates. We don't profit from this. This is merely passing through the costs, and obviously the costs have gone up. They went up in June by a little over close to $5, $4.93, I believe. And we raised the PCA again on September 1, effective September 1. That was done at the July meeting.
And we raised the PCA, not the basic rate.
Correct, just the PCA. Why has the PCA gone up? And we talked about it earlier during the meeting in regards to solar and natural gas prices, which our contracts are pegged to, increased. And that's the real cost of producing power. And we actually enjoy a very, very good contract for our wholesale power with Orlando Utilities Commission. It's a very good, very aggressive contract. And it's actually saved us millions and millions of dollars between 2019 and 2022, and actually continues to save us dollars, even though the price has gone up for the basic commodity. Natural gas prices did spike, and they did spike quickly. And we heard members of the public today who came to complain, rightfully so, that we had a rapid increase in the PCA. That's because prices increased rapidly on us. Natural gas prices tripled very quickly, or quadrupled or quintupled, right? And we were looking at $14 and $15 gas prices in July, August on some days. Years prior, 2020, 2021, 2019, we were looking at numbers in the $3.50 range or lower. So gas prices spiked and the cost of power spiked. Recall that back in November of 2021, this body, the commission, approved the changes to how we do the PCA. Prior to that, it was annual. Right. And the commission, rightfully so, thought, hey, if gas prices go down, we want the ability to drop the price quickly rather than wait a whole year. I think that was good intent. That wasn't a bad idea. What we didn't anticipate was that the markets were going to take off the way they did. And anybody who says they knew that, why are they still here? They didn't put their own money on it and buy natural gas futures, right? We certainly didn't know. So if we had stayed on an annual checkup, if you will, it would have been devastated to the city's general fund. Through October, we were looking at a $4.3 million imbalance, meaning that we've paid $4.3 million more for energy in the PCA than we've collected from our customers in PCA revenues.
Even with the raise, even with the increase.
Right, even with the raise. Now, the raise only took effect on September 1. It was approved July 26 because of our cycles allows us to modify the billing system to get that out there. So the gas prices continue to go up. If we had stayed on an annual basis, we probably would have come running in here to say, we're in trouble. No. We don't have enough working capital as a city to float this. We need to have an immediate check or checkup on the rate. Doing it quarterly, while it's tedious and it brings these discussions out in great detail and takes a lot of time, it's not imprudent. As a matter of fact, I could argue in this market that it's actually prudent. Every utility in the state, rates are going up. Many utilities had the reserves to postpone the increase and maybe draw down on the reserves a little bit, meaning they were slightly over collected. We're under collected. The big utilities all gave notice, the investor-owned utilities all gave notice to the Florida Public Service Commission in midsummer. I think it was around May or June, they filed indicating to the commission that their costs were going to be significantly higher, meaning more than 10% above what they had anticipated when they set their PCAs for the year. They did not immediately ask to change the rate. They just noticed and said, the numbers are getting big. Some of them have already published or appealed. I shouldn't say appeal is not the right word. They've requested their 2023 rate be adjusted to reflect the expected 2023 gas costs.
Which you anticipated going up.
Absolutely going up. The catch there is, I said 2023. They have not yet said what they're going to do about how far behind they are in the 2022 number. That shoe is yet to drop. We have one of the lower exposures to natural gas of the utilities in the state. That bill, we suspect, is relatively high for others. That's not something to rejoice about, but it's something to say, as hard as this is, what we're doing is we're collecting this money on a more timely basis than others might be. And everybody is facing this crisis, not just us. In this adjustment, which we're required by resolution to bring forward tonight, we did the numbers, and I know Craig Shepard from Leidos is on the phone and on Zoom, and he'll chime in. We calculate that we need an additional adjustment on December 1. What staff has suggested, though, and it's in the documents in the backup for tonight, rather than make another adjustment upward, is to hold where we're at. By resolution, we're required to bring you the mathematical result, right? But as a recommendation, we're suggesting that we hold where we're at. And why would we say that? We say that because the futures are indicating that the markets are coming down. And rather than try to recover the entire under collection, if you will, over a 3-month period, let's stay where we're at and let's let it run out over a longer period of time, knowing that we're going to be buying gas at a lower price than that previous PCA estimated. So again, rather than trying to recover the under recovery quickly and then drop the rates, we suggest we stay where we're at, not apply any more pain to our customers, and come back to you again in a few months, which we're required to do every 3 months anyway. We can continue to monitor it monthly. My staff watches this. I track on my iPhone natural gas prices daily. We look at it every day. Staff runs new numbers. I'm driving them crazy because I'm asking them all the time. And Brian's sitting back there rolling his eyes, I'm sure, because I asked him to do it so many times. But we can see how it goes. But at the moment, natural gas prices have come down significantly. The futures markets are showing numbers in the low 6s to high 5s for the coming 3 to 6 months. And my $3 to $6. Correct.
Rather than you talking about $15 or $14?
Correct. Yep. So we should.
Right.
Right. It's a traded commodity. Not quite pork bellies, but it trades rapidly. There's thousands of traders in the country just trading these commodities. There's more to it than just the price of the gas, though. So one of the things that really spiked the gas prices high into that $15 range was something that we call basis. And this is where we get techie. But when you look at natural gas prices online, it's the NYMEX contract that's in every newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, it's on Yahoo Finance or any website you want to go to. That's the futures contract traded at a point called a Henry Hub. It's a spot Louisiana. And that's, if you will, the stump in the middle of the market square where people shout out prices and trade. That's what it is. That's a proxy for what gas is trading in the market. What you actually pay for gas is the cost of the commodity itself, the gas, plus the cost to get it delivered to where you are. Because we're in South Florida, the power plants producing the power for us are in Central Florida. That's a far drive from Louisiana. So how'd the gas get there? Where it moved through pipelines, and those pipelines are interconnected to other pipelines and the thousands of customers up and down the East Coast and into the Midwest. There was a market dislocation where the mid-continent or mid-Atlantic coast had such a high demand for natural gas that all of the gas that could get to those markets was going to those markets and the price was getting high. It's supply and demand. The cost to move the gas, or the basis differential, the difference in gas cost between where you need it and where it's traded, that's the basis, gotten very high because there was so much demand up the East Coast. And also for gas to go into LNG. That took the total gas and got it up in that $13 to $15 range. That basis differential historically that we priced around was in the range of 15 to maybe 20 cents or 30 cents. It got up to $5, $6, and $7. So that drove the price really very high. That affected everybody in the Florida market. Everybody in the Florida market. So we've had to absorb that. We can't carry that working capital, and this is a cost that by our own city resolutions is passed through. Now, we've had some things that went in our favor. We actually had a billing error by OUC, which Assistant Director Brian King uncovered. OUC investigated it immediately and with great thoroughness, and that billing error correction has been applied to the PCA. So that's a good thing. So the PCA is held lower because of that now. And that credit is coming to us in monthly installments, 4 installments. The first one's been made, and they'll come in 3 successive months as credits on our bill. At the same time, we were able to do well when the gas prices spiked in our capacity release program, where we sell some of our gas capacity that we don't need for our own power plant. That capacity or space in the pipe became very valuable, and we actually had a gain there. That gain for the year is about 1.5 million. That 1.5 million, though, is in our base rate side, so it's going to help us defer or hold or minimize any future base rate increase that we might have. So as much as it hurt us on the PCA that gas prices went up, our capacity sale process has actually netted us 1.5 million for the calendar year, for the fiscal year rather. That's going to help offset increased costs in our base rates. Our base rates would normally not adjust until January 1, but we're going to be doing modeling in the next few weeks together with Stantec and our finance department to determine how much of any of a base rate increase will we need, knowing that we've got that credit there. We've got more income than we expected there. So that's a good thing. Nonetheless, here we are with a PCA that by formula says should be $7 and change. Staff is recommending that we not increase and that we hold where we're at. And with that, if Craig is on the phone, on the Zoom, if you want to add anything else, or if you want to throw some questions, and we'll work through them.
Yes, this is Craig Shepard. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. This is Craig Shepard with Leidos. Yes, the recommendation is to keep it the same. And like Ed said, the shortfall for June, July, and August was about 4.2 million. If we keep it the same, that'll recover about 80% of that shortfall. So we'll be in pretty good shape just leaving it the same. Keeping track of, the next PCA will make up the rest of it. That's the plan.
Okay. I believe Commissioner Malega's light was on first.
Which is funny because I normally don't have a lot of conversation to be had around these subjects, but I often think, why do we compare ourselves to FPL? And that's probably because it's right next door. But I went a little bit further and I looked at municipalities and what they've been doing over the last couple of months to try to see, are we ahead of the curve? Are we doing what everybody else is doing? Where are we? So I'll wrap it up in a little bow. Lee County, as of June 29th, for 1,000 kilowatt hour for the residential customer, their bill before tax was $150, $170. That's according to Lee County's. What's that?
What's ours?
Ours is 140. Oh. 140 and change after our increase.
I think in June we were around 119 or something like that.
But I'm saying after our increase, we're still at 140. So this again is as of June with Lee County. The other place that I looked at was West Florida Electric. And on September 9th, they just did another increase. And they're looking at $167.59 before taxes.
Wow.
And the reason I looked at municipalities is because, again, we're not the big boys next door that everyone compares it to, but I wanted to see, what are other small towns who are faced with these financial decisions, which really that's what it's coming down to, because this affects our bottom line. And I'm hearing the same thing we're all hearing is that, we really, that's why I didn't want to do the increase with sewer, even though Brian's probably like, why pick on me, right? I thank you for bringing this forward. I am in 100% support of staff's recommendation. And I'm hoping that the next conversation we have, we can go backwards a little bit. And it is nice to know that we're in line with other municipalities. We're actually cheaper than other municipalities. And we're being cognizant, and the fact that we are looking at this every quarter, I think shows our genuine care and concern for our residents and our business owners, that we didn't just say, yep, go ahead and increase it and we'll see you next year. You know, that we really did, we were thoughtful, I think, in making that decision as a board. And I know that there's a lot of time and energy and effort that's going into keeping up with these numbers, and I want to thank staff for it. And I want to encourage every resident that's out there, business owner, to take advantage of the many programs that we have to lower their electric bill. Call Commissioner McVoy whenever you have a question. He'll help you walk through. So I want to say thank you and for all your hard work. And I do agree with you that we don't need to do another increase right now at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, I think was next.
Yeah, I would have been supportive of no change. It's great that staff and Mr. Liberty are in agreement, because it's a much more, it's a vote in confidence, because I would have been going for no change regardless. But in terms, I had a quick question about that billing error from OUC. That's not money into the fund. That's basically credit for future purchases. Okay. Because one thought I've had, because in that similar motion, I guess, or I've looked at other potential things and what we can do to help people. And I've talked about this with Carmen as well. And this is perhaps a better conversation for the future workshop to add to the agenda, is what can we do to help, have a plan to help in case this happens again, and it will, and people always will struggle. But if, we can explore maybe the possibility of having some sort of fund for, unprecedented rise in utility rates or whatever, to make it available for those in need. We've talked about some potential options of maybe even if it was like a little bit of ARPA money, and then, it could be a short-term thing, because I see, just like you said, this isn't going to be a forever problem. Obviously, Europe is having a really big effect on this, and we're making moves to move away from, towards more stable energy sources. And so maybe even if it was like a short-term 2 or 3 year thing, and then, at the end of it, if we don't have to use the fund to help people, then, we have it available to use for something else. So basically what I'm getting at is I would love to have a discussion and see, what can we do so that we as in the utility and our customers aren't caught as off guard, and, we can have something in place as a sort of insurance that we can deploy if needed.
Thank you. Commissioner McVoy?
Yeah,
It's on.
I think we're on.
It's on.
You can't see it because of the cup there. I don't expect that you're going to find any objection from the commission to the idea of not raising the rates at this point. A couple of things that I do want to understand, and a couple of things that I want to address. The shortfall you mentioned for the last period, which ends in October, I guess it is, October, September, August period. Do I have the period right? Or is it July through September?
June, July, August is what I have written down.
Right, June, July, August.
Okay. June, July, August?
Yes.
So the one that we decided, when we decided to raise it, we voted to raise it in July, what period was that referring to? Presumably April, May?
March, April, May, yes.
And what was the shortfall at that point in millions? Because March, April, May.
I believe that was it around 1.4 to 1.7 million dollars? But we were looking at the formula also includes the projection, and the projection was for much higher costs. Right. And then if some of you remember, let's go back, because it's a very good discussion to have. We submitted those documents on July 11 for July 26 meeting. That means that we ran the models right up to the cusp of the July 11 deadline to get it in the public record.
Right.
Some of you may remember that I had some folded up papers in my pocket that I came to that meeting with and said, if I had run the numbers again today,
It'd be a lot.
it'd be another $10 on top of the 20. I think it was about $10 higher. And that's how fast the markets were moving.
Yeah.
Now we stuck with the number that we had in the agenda. And now we look at it and said, if we were, it wouldn't have been 10, it would have been $7.44, right? So it's pretty close. So we're picking these numbers well in advance.
Yeah, and we have to. I mean, we don't know what the number is going to be in November.
Right.
Or anything else. We have to make, and all we can do is make our best guesses.
Right.
As it turns out, after that July 11, I can't quite tell on my graph. I had a more detailed one, but it shot up some more. Like you said, when you came to the meeting, it had gone up quite a bit more. It hit 16. Didn't stay 16 that long, fortunately, but it hit it. And for all the reasons that you mentioned, the combination of the actual gas price and the delivered price became almost half of the total price, which had never happened before. It was crazy. And we were predicting on that. My concern is, I think we, as a commission, need to know if our shortfall the last time that led to the raise that we did in July, if that shortfall was addressed, or the raise was addressing a shortfall of, let's call it 2 million roughly for that March, April, June, if I keep getting the months wrong. And the next shortfall, July, August, September, is about 4 million. My concern is, and now we're not doing any raise to address that, how are we doing in the big picture? And I would add to that, and yeah, I know, I've read all that, but thank you. I would also add, I think one of the things that Ed mentioned is, as we raise the rate, we're using the income coming in from those months to address a previous problem. So the problem was during March, April, May, we were in a period where usage was going up. It went up even more because it went through the hottest months, July, August, September, where we're cooking. So not only was the gas price had gone up during this more recent 3 months, but the usage went up. Now we're going forward on a period where usage is going to go down because it's cooler. And we all said, hey, good, we're turning off our AC because we're paying a lot, which is good. We're paying less, but we have less money coming in to pay back OUC.
Right. It takes a longer, it takes.
Understand how are we,
No,
and we don't have any reserves to Montahello beans either.
No, it's a very good concern. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to recover dollars that we spent that we haven't collected yet, right? And we're recovering over fewer kilowatt hours that we're selling to customers. That's why it would take, if we try to do that all in 3 months, we'd have to raise another $7.44. What we're saying is let the markets that have come down
continue to come down.
Hopefully continue,
Hopefully
right.
stay down.
And if I need to run back in here a month from now, believe me, I will, right?
Yeah.
Even if we have to have an emergency meeting, but at the moment, it's showing that the market's
Coming down.
right. So we have lower volumes, but we also have lower prices. So let's let it pay out over a period of time. And remember that by formula, and this is in the public record, if we look at line 3, there's an item that says projected power costs for the 3 months. So not only are you recovering, you're adjusting your under or your over from the period 3 months, but you're projecting what your power costs are going to be for the next 3 months, and you're adjusting your rate for that too. I like to point out, and it's not always intuitive, but we incur the expense very quickly. So typically within the first 5 to 10 days, 7 days of the month, we get the power bill for the prior month. And I believe those terms are usually around net 15 because these are big numbers.
Yeah.
We have read the meters. We've billed our customers. They might pay us within 42 days of when they get the bill, which could be 72 days after they first started using electricity.
Yeah.
We don't have the cash in the bank to pay the bill on the day that the bill came in. We rely on working capital, right? So that means that we've got $4+ million of float out there, which we believe our customers will pay us back to the PCA, but we've already paid the bill.
So essentially, we're living paycheck to paycheck in the electric utility.
That's.
I think all businesses do that with their work, with a line of credit or working capital. It's very difficult to bill a customer on the same day you provided the service and get
Right.
paid that same day. So you always have a lag.
Like your restaurant.
Right.
I
We're-
thought it-
Public.
We're a very generous utility because we have a long time between when we shut a customer off for non-payment so we might go 42 days. One of the things, for example, that we did not talk about, and I'm proud to tell the commission that we didn't shut anybody off for 8 business days during the storm.
During the storm?
During the storm. We did that for our customers, for our neighbors, our friends, right? The people we work for, the people in most need. So we know that they'll pay us back, right? But we stretch that out. We need that working capital there, and all businesses use working capital.
And there had been some reserves, but the lowering of the electric rates a few years ago by our predecessors ate away at those reserves, so we don't have a cushion.
That, in all fairness, that was a part of it, but not all of it. We also had some very large unforeseen events. We had at that time Irma, which was 1.9 million. We had the crash of GT2, turbine failure, that was 1.2 million. Then we had Dorian, which was 3.9 million. Those are some big numbers, big one-time hits that came through the system. But in all fairness, then we reduced our power costs by close to 9 million. We held rates. We went through those 3 successive decreases in rates, but then we renegotiated power contracts. It took our power costs from $72 a megawatt hour down to $52 a megawatt hour. And on 470,000 megawatt hours, that equated to about $9 million a year in savings. So that's been helping us rebuild that working capital, if it will. And so there were pluses and minuses. We started the year with a negative fund balance. I believe that we haven't issued results yet, but I believe that will be resolved by the end of this year. We'll be back to where we should be, going in the right direction. We've been building it up every year, but there are a lot of things that hit us. The city did take out a $10 million bond for working capital not that long ago, and 4.3 million of that right now, or 4.2 million, is at least the electric piece on the PCA.
The electric what?
The electric PCA is probably a big piece of what's being used in that $10 million working capital bond that was issued. So these are bills, these are expenses that we're incurring. We're not marking it up. It is what it is. I also want to give a shout out to OUC. When we discovered, when Assistant Director Brian King identified this problem, and we brought it to the attention of OUC, they didn't dismiss us. They didn't minimize it. They immediately went to work on it. And shortly thereafter, I was at the annual conference of the Florida Municipal Electric Association. I was approached by 2 officers of the company. They wanted me to know personally from them that they were aware of the issue and they were going to chase it around and resolve it. And it took them a couple of months of detailed investigation. No malfeasance. It was just an error that was deep within the code of the billing they had to go through to find it. And they went all the way back to January of 19. So it's never good to have a billing error. It does happen. What I was impressed with was the manner in which they approached it, how forthcoming they were with the fact that they had made a mistake. And then they had to set their offices for half a day to go through the details of what that mistake was. And it's all well documented and in our files for our internal auditor to look through if he chooses to.
Commissioner Stokes.
I would just like to, I know that we're reviewing these quarterly and we want to try to recover our costs as quickly as possible, but I do want to, as we move forward through this quarter and the next quarter and after that, think of a way that we would be able to hopefully time these rate increases. I know this one was like huge, fast, but if there was a way to smooth it out over the year so like they don't hit right in the beginning of the summer. I hear what Vice Mayor McVoy is saying, which from a business side, we have to worry about it. But I also think over the summer when people have huge bills and then they see increases at that time, it's a lot harder to handle than like right now. Hopefully, as we go into the winter months, the percent increase won't be hit them as hard because their bill's lower than it would be over the summer. So I want to just maybe part of our rate discussion, our workshop, we can look at different scenarios. I know we would love to have a rate stabilization fund because that would allow us to like dip into that and help smooth this out. And we don't have it, but I'd still like for us to try to think of other ways that we might be able to help smooth this out a little bit.
Rate stabilization is important. We unfortunately don't have it. We've talked about creating it. Of course, I'm not sure that I would advocate raising rates to create the fund, but if the gas prices were to go down and we could stay where we're at and then create the fund that way, that would be good. But there's a number of other things that we could do. For example, we don't have a storm fund. We don't have a storm reserve. We've talked about maybe creating a $2.5 million storm reserve, because even a small storm is 900,000 to 1.9 million. The big one could be 3.9 and well above it. And then who knows if FEMA would help us at all, right? So we need a storm fund as well. And we need to build our working capital up to that 180 days of cash on hand, right? And we're well on our way to doing that. So there's a lot of things that we need to do in rebuilding this utility. I think it's remarkable, not just this commission, but obviously the prior commission too, put us on a path to start to turn these things around. And the fact that we've been able to issue 2 successive bond issues, if you count the 2 bond issues and you count the money that we had in the Bank of America account and then some self-funded PAYGO, it's close to $100 million of capital investment going into utility. We went from 24th to 6th, right? And that's pretty significant. That says a lot about what we're trying to do for our customers. So granted, if you're sitting at home right now, they're just here and want, right? You raised my rates. I get that. But we're working really hard to improve a lot of things here, but we're not trying to take it out of you in the fuel charge. The fuel charge is the fuel charge. It's what it cost us.
Okay, real quick, Commissioner McBoyd.
It won't be quick. So I'll let you know that in advance, because this is important. The things that we're talking about right now are, what are we going to do for the most recent gas price increase? What the community, I think you hit it a little bit on the head, Director Liberty, is the community, from everything I'm hearing, and I suspect that all the rest of us are hearing it similarly, is they are in arms. And I'm sympathetic to some of that, because we could have avoided some of it, and we could have done much better on putting information out. And at the time that we voted and agreed to do the raising in July, we asked specifically, make information available to the community so they are more informed customers. And we have still not really done that. And
I disagree. I'm going to jump right in because I'm not going to listen to that.
Wait,
I don't care. We did. The July bill, as a matter of fact, had a full page. Why is my bill high? We put information on the website. We made this. It was right on the bills. We informed people. We got it out. Now we could always do better, but we did in fact make an attempt, and we got information out there. We talked about it in October of 2021. We talked about it in November. We talked about it in April. We talked about it in July. And in the July bills, everybody got the notice. Now, I'm not saying it was enough. I'm not saying it was perfect, but we did try to get this out. And it's been in the news. It's hard to listen to a news broadcast without talking about what's happening with gas price. Now, a lot of people just say, oh, that's gasoline, not natural gas, but it was happening. We tried. I know you're passionate about it, and we have a lot of things that we agree with, but to say that we didn't try to do this, we certainly did try to get the notices out there. It was talked about extensively in public meetings here. It's in all the backup. It's in the details. It was all provided.
it's not clear. It's not clear to people. And that's clear if you look empirically. And as a science guy, I tend to be empirical. Let's not have an opinion about whether the community understands it or not. Let's look to what's going on out there. And it's very clear that people are very bent out of shape about it. I feel that at least a portion of that frustration that people feel is in fact not based in the rate increase, but because we as a utility have done a very poor job of helping people know what is a reasonable usage at a household level. And, you know, I took a fair amount of trouble to put together and try to make sure that the staff had verified that things were accurate. If you use 5,000 kilowatt hours a month, you are using 5 times roughly FP&L's number, our own average number, the US Energy Administration number. People don't know that. And at 5,000 kilowatt an hour, you're paying us $675 a month. That is a lot of money. If you were paying that to FP&L prior to our increase in September, you'd be paying them $670. It's essentially the same, and that's true of all of
No,
them.
that's very true. And I do commend you, by the way, in your messaging to the public. And I think that was a helpful thing to do on your Facebook page. That particular account, and this is where we get a lashing in the public arena. I'm a customer is using over 5,000 kilowatt hours a month on a house that's 2,099 square feet under air. That is 3.5 times a normal household use. 3.5 times.
Yep.
And that particular home, and I'm not going to out the name and the address, but they've been using energy at that rate for many, many years. It's inconceivable to me that that person would not have known that there were free energy audits available if the utility could help for year after year after year. In the same bill that the customer was posting online, look at what this utility did to me. There was the message that said, why is my bill high? With an offer to do a free energy audit for them. Everybody got that. We didn't hear from that customer until Friday afternoon, 4:06 or 4:07 p.m. timestamp to finally say, can I have an energy audit? Right.
I hear, and I don't want to weigh anything on a individual person, and I wasn't referring to that.
But it sparked a big wave of public outcry, including the press.
But it was also resonating. And what we need to do as a utility is look carefully at the distribution of usage. And we need to get that number pushed out very strongly that, look, if you're a halfway normal size household, you should be aiming for somewhere in the 1,000 to 1,200 kilowatt hours a month, adjusted for winter months, summer months, and we can help you with giving that adjustment. If you find that you're noticeably away from, if you're a couple hundred away from it, that's probably not a big deal. If you're 2 or 3 times away from it, and you're okay with your usage and you're okay with your bill, that's fine. But we need to help people understand. And we have a significant chunk of people.
We actually have on our website a utility bill estimator that's right there next to the free energy audit tab. You can click on that and calculate what your energy bill should be for your home. So it doesn't mean
Madam Mayor,
but we do that.
I apologize. We've reached the half hour.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, now let me just, if we approve it, we're approving no increase.
Motion to approve the base.
The alternate.
Yeah, should make sure you, yeah, I would say.
Right. Mr. Liberty, what?
Commissioner McBoy and I, we can debate all night on this, but
Yeah.
no. No.
Okay, so our motion, what would be the correct motion not to raise this?
I would assume that, I would suggest that the motion to keep the PCA.
To approve the PCA.
No, leave the piece to leave the PCA as it currently is at current level.
Change. Approve to leave the PCA at the current level.
Second. Okay, Commissioner.
Before the
McBoyle.
vote, I have
No, wait,
several comments. I'm sorry.
I have a couple. Do you have any, Madam Clerk?
I do. We have 2 that are waiting online, and I
Okay.
have 10 that I need to read.
Okay. And I have a couple here. So let's put the folks online that want to be online.
Okay, the first one is Kara Jennings. I am allowing her to talk now.
Okay, and this is 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Hi, Kara. Good evening.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Okay, great. It's a little hard to follow what exactly your motion is, so I'll have to speak just generally. Well,
Please state your name and address, please.
Yeah.
Kara Jennings, 822 North C Street. First, I want to say that my partner Panayoti got an email that his comment will not be read because he got his in after the 10 that you've decided are the holy 10 that you're willing to read at the meeting. So we're homesick with COVID, and that's really a bummer that people's comments can't get read into the record. But on this issue, I mean, you all have pretty much covered it. The issue is the utility director, by policy recommendation from prior commissions, and really yourselves up until now, has drowned us in fossil fuels. And so these rate hikes just keep going and going. Over 10 years ago, the commission had a conservation program in place. They were doing energy audits. The commission had a conservation program in place. They were doing energy audits constantly. I know you've restarted that program. That's great, but you've only started the audit part. You haven't started the other part, which actually gave people the tools to retrofit their homes, to put in new windows, to upgrade their AC units, to have solar hot water heaters installed, and all of these ways that people can have an immediate improvement on their electric bill. The program was established for elderly residents on fixed incomes and low-income families to have the priority, and then for other income brackets to come in after the funds had been kind of in motion for those families that are of higher need. So I really hope you'll look at something like this. You can't just keep increasing the rates without offering some actual tangible remedies. And a home energy audit is a great first step, but it's not the whole solution. So I hope you'll really look at that whole package of funding improvements so people can remedy the issues in their old homes, their beautiful old historic homes that are leaking energy and causing really high bills. And then the other issue.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. And I think that self program that we've entered into is a helpful tool for that, addressing the issues that people are having. It's not total, it's a step in the right direction. Okay, next, ma'am.
The second comment is from Helen Bentenses. I apologize if I messed up your name. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Helen Betances, and I'd like to address, good evening, by the way. I'd like to address the utility director that just spoke, vice mayor and the other commissioners that absolutely do not approve this current PCA. I don't even know why you would motion that, because like Vice Mayor McVeigh just pointed out, we're in arms about everything that has transpired. All I've heard in this meeting that I've sat through for over 2 hours is talk about the rate usage and how we can save energy and everything else that is nonsense to the average consumer. Nothing is discussed about this PCA. This PCA has nothing to do with our usage. You can sit there and show me all the graphs in the world, Vice Mayor McVeigh, and it's not going to do anything. And I'm college educated, and I'm one of the probably few residents that do understand how utility works. But the bottom line is you're not doing anything to justify the price gouging that this utility director, the way he just dismisses you, McVeigh, he literally has something to hide, because he is not okay. Whatever they've done, they don't want to recognize that they have screwed up. They did not do the planning they were supposed to do. And now that's why the word price gouging is a federal crime. You cannot do it. It's a state crime. And you're doing it to our residents here in the city of Lake Worth Beach. It is not okay. You cannot just keep increasing prices. I'm on disability. I got aid from Palm Beach County for $1,000 grant. And you know what? It went bye-bye because you guys decided to 100%. Here's my utility rate that I agree with. Maybe I used a little bit more energy, but you don't get to double it because you decide to add a PCA equal to my usage. We're not discussing the usage. I'm tired of you people keep saying that everybody's complaining about their usage. We are not. We are not complaining about our usage. We're complaining that you're price gouging us and doubling our usage with no reasonable explanation.
I'm sorry, your time has elapsed.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, I forgot to ask on the record, what is your address, ma'am?
So you can come up and pick it. 76 18th Avenue South. Hi, Mayor Betty.
Hi.
Thank you very
very
much. For everybody that our motion was to keep the rates the same, and we're not
raise them.
increasing it anymore tonight.
Right. And I have, then you have 10 to read?
I do, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Would you like me to go first, or the people in the audience?
Go ahead.
Okay.
We only have one in the room.
The first one that I have is for Thomas Arabia at 1409 High Ridge Road. This comment is regarding item N on the meeting agenda, references power cost adjustment, PCA. Prior to April 2022, a calculation or explanation of the proposed power cost adjustment increase was prepared and published by this Board of Commissioners for the period of April 2022 through June 2022. The bottom line of that calculation represented an increase of approximately 4.93 per 1,000 kilowatt per rate payer per month. The PCA charge on my April 2022 electric bill was $68.28. The PCA charge on my May bill was $112.93. The June had a PCA charge similar to at $112.18. To my knowledge, there was no PCA calculation or explanation prepared or published by the Board of Commissioners for the period of July 2022 through the present, yet the PCA continued to increase. In July, my PCA charge increased to $139.04. In August, my PCA charge was $216.80, which was almost as much as my charge for actual usage. I just got my September bill. As of preparing this comment, the PCA charge was $173.12. I asked this question as the voice for all 27,550 ratepayers. How does this board justify such excessive PCA charges? They are so much greater than your published projection. If the average ratepayer was charged a PCA of $100 per month, that equates to $2.75 million per month. Mind you, this estimate is quite low, as I am. My apologies.
That's your timer.
Yeah, it's very loud. The next one.
We wondered what it was.
Better be loud than soft on a timer.
Yeah. The next
Okay.
one is from Louis Tamayo at 116 Wellesley Drive. Lake Worth Beach needs to assign someone outside of the electric utility department who reports directly to the city manager to oversee the city's efforts to promote energy conservation, renewables, and climate change mitigation. This person should be responsible for the following. Number one, apply for grants to help and assist our residents with funding available in the Inflation Reduction Act 2022 to install A, water pump, heat pump, water heaters, and AC systems. B, upgraded breaker boxes. C, home and city-owned facilities, insulation and weatherization improvements. D, rooftop solar. 2, apply for grants to help and assist our residents with funding available in new infrastructure bill 2021 to help fund A, expand the installation of plug-in vehicle chargers, improve our electric grid to accommodate renewable energy, and C, electrify the city's fleet of vehicles and support equipment. And 3, this person or energy guru should be also responsible for all other aspects of energy conservation and climate mitigation, such as A, study alternative ways of dealing with the millions of gallons of treated water that are wasted each year to flush our portable utility pipes. B, installation of rooftop solar panels and storage batteries on city-owned buildings. C, solar street lights, solar generators, battery-powered blower, mowers, etc. D, expansion of our tree canopy to provide more shade. E, sea level rise mitigation. And F, storm preparation and cleanup coordination. The next one that I have is Ellen Ashford at 1414 High Ridge Road. My daughter cheers for every solar panel she sees in the city. Even kids can see that we need to use less fossil fuels and more solar. What is our utility doing to protect us from natural gas price increases? What kind of community solar program do we have? How do we make it better? Fossil fuel prices will only go up in the future. Why don't we have more solar at our landfill? Does our utility use batteries to get more benefit from solar panels? What is our utility doing to maximize benefits for residents? Michael Beautyman, 2010 Notre Dame Drive. Please develop forthwith a comprehensive solar power source for Lake Worth Beach. Let's shed ourselves of dependence on the vagaries of the marketplace. Richard Stowe, 414 North Federal Highway. Ratepayers have been harmed by the city electric utility over dependence on climate warming, fracked gas, and fossil fuel electricity generating suppliers. The city electric utility should work with the city officials to, one, create financing to install white metal roofs on structures all over the city. The utility should become a distributor of these white metal roofs. Replacing asphalt roofs with white metal roofs will make our city stronger and significantly reduce electricity bills. Air-conditioned space is the largest single electricity use in our buildings. 2, the utility and city should become a distributor for Nevada-based Havenlock wool insulation, the cleanest, most natural insulation available in the marketplace. The city electric utility should finance insulating ceilings with Havenlock wool. 3, the city electric utility should finance design and installation of heat pumps, electric water heaters in order to take business away from tankless gas water heaters that Florida Public Utility promotes to take away business from the city electric utility. These 3 investments would reduce the city's carbon footprint and reduce bills for ratepayers. The pure white metal roofs would create a new look for the city in which the city's efforts would be acknowledged and admired. Marion DeJong, 2381 Sunset Avenue. Really another rate increase. The prices at the pump have gone down, not up since the last rate increase. Why are we being asked to pay more? I am very disappointed in our utilities director. Why? Ed Liberty for not putting our city on the cutting edge of energy efficiency. This is a disgrace in this age of dire climate emergency in a state with continuous sunshine. I've lived in Arizona with with a comparable amount of sunshine, solar panels everywhere, and the state and city supporting it. Why aren't we demanding every new developer put solar panels on the roof? I am against this rate hike and I'm astounded we are even being asked. Are we allowed to use the ARPA funds to become less dependent on fossil fuels? If Ed Liberty cannot manage our utilities better, I respectfully ask that this commission take action to find a leader who can. Danny Barnett, 302 Lake Osborne Drive, apartment 1. As global warming, sea level rise, and saltwater intrusion are all near and long-term threats to our city, it would seem imperative that we take a leadership role in investing in renewable energy. That move would also help stabilize energy prices. In addition to Commissioner McVoy's excellent suggestions, I advocate for a public-private effort to utilize solar-covered parking lots. It offers protection from sun and rain for customers, goodwill for store owners, and free space for our utilities. Forward-thinking, civic-minded store owners could contribute by paying the expense of the structure to hold the solar panels and be rewarded by providing a superior shopping experience for their customers. Marion Desiderio, 231 Cornell Drive. We need to make investments that not only lower costs, but prioritize the environment. In light of the frequent storms, burying the lines are also proved to be a good investment for cities. Installing underground lines costs more initially. My apologies. Installing underground lines costs more initially than overhead lines, but the underground lines are less prone to damage. My apologies, my computer is making a horrendous noise. Give me just a second. Okay, I think I fixed it. It's doing weird stuff today. Installing underground lines costs more initially than overhead lines, but the underground lines are less prone to damage and disruptions, and maintenance is less expensive. Karen Ryan, 1017 North J Street. I cannot believe the city is going backwards in the utilities. We had finally lost the reputation of being the highest utilities in the state. There are so many retirees on fixed incomes who simply cannot afford these unnecessary increases. even as someone who is semi-retired, coupled with the inflation we are all experiencing, this is insane. And the last is from Shauna Coolican, 1629 South Lakeside Drive. The city of Lake Worth Beach jumped on natural gas for short-term cost savings and totally ignored customer interest in solar options. Now natural gas prices have jumped and so have our electric bills. Lake Worth Beach fought to be forward-thinking with the RO water, and we should have done the same with solar energy and other conservation options. The city should serve residents, not generate cash for bureaucracy. Residents who want affordable and sustainable electricity. There should be no rate increase without a solar program plan and an energy conservation, energy efficiency program with targets and measurements. The total against the item were 21.
Thank you. And we have one up here, that's Peggy Fisher. Well, but she says new business N, but then she talks about the PCA, which is M. It's about the PCA. Okay. Yep, but she actually wants to talk about tiers, I think, so I'm looking. We'll do it. I don't know.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. I think what I'm hearing, first of all, I compliment all of you and the utility for bringing forth making no change. The utility has included things in people's bills as far as writing it on the bills. But I think a lot of customers, I'm guilty of it, do not read it. It's just more, you get the bill and you take a gulp and then you go on. But you all talk so much about education, informing people. In July, you went on and on and on and on about it. Not the utility should, you all, the city. And that's the problem. Don't throw it on them. I will throw one thing on them. I think somebody, and I pointed it out to the city manager, and I think she's going to address it. There was a power outage in a vast majority of the city yesterday. There's been not one word about it tonight. There are so many people saying, what happened? What happened? Businesses that lost business, lost items. That's keeping your constituents informed. Put it out there. It's not on my email. I didn't get an email. I didn't see anything. I get emails all the time from the city. You have to do a better job of really communicating. And I'm not saying putting it in the utility bill is wrong. It's just not what people are going to look at. But they look at their commissioners. And that's where you have to speak up. You have to communicate. You have to talk to your constituents. The mayor does this all the time, and I compliment her for responding to comments people make. For the rest of it, I think Commissioner Malika does too. But so many times it's crickets. And so when it's crickets, people make their own conclusions.
I'm sorry, your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, Amy Farrader, 30 South J Street. It's not exactly this topic, but I'll go ahead. It says new business item M, so I'm just going with what she's telling me here. No,
Apologies.
it has nothing to do with either, so it doesn't really matter.
Sorry, I don't, apologies to interrupt, but I'm reading the online comments and we already read 10. This one's already listed on the website, like I'm looking at it right now. So can we maybe read it to be in line with our policy? Maybe we should read it when. Yes, it starts with utilities are a part of housing costs.
Right.
Right, so it's already on the website as a posted comment,
But what?
It was submitted.
but it was also on our website.
I'll just read it real quick. I mean, she was submitted here, so let's do it. It's real quick because there's.
Madam Mayor,
I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, she did submit it for the next item to the city clerk's office, so I have it for the next item.
Oh, okay.
I spoke to her and she wanted it read for the tiered
All right,
item.
she put N on one and M on the other. So, and actually, her comments have not very much to do with either one of them, but it's general. So we'll just put it on M then.
Okay.
So, okay, so we have a motion not to Restate the motion.
A motion to keep the base rates where they are on the PCA. Yes, the PCA base rate, the alternate,
Keep the PCA rate where it is.
where it is, no raise.
Okay, and I have a second from Commissioner McBoy, I believe. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to what was M and now is B. And this has to do with tiers.
Rate tiers.
Spelled TIER.
Yes. Yes. So
With the other one.
let's go back in time to the July 26th meeting, which I think was an important, obviously an important meeting. There are a number of things that the commission asked for at the time that you took the vote on the PCA, and the timelines are important. So we come up with a number on July 11th, then you vote on July 26th, but it's not effective until September 1. Right? So in that vote that night, as a group, you added a number of items for us to follow up on. This tiered rates is one of them. We're going to talk about that, but there were three others. So we should mention where do they stand. I believe one was demand response program. That was on the agenda to speak tonight for approval of the contract, but we didn't have the proper documents from that company, the contract signed and all the T's and C's completed. So rather than bring you an incomplete product, we pulled it from the agenda this afternoon. And I said, it'll have to wait till the November meeting because we would have been presenting you with something that in any other form, we wouldn't bring you that document. So we decided to hold. We're not planning to change the supplier. The procurement will work through the details. And I think they've already submitted the documents that we need, but it wasn't in time for us to feel comfortable saying tonight. I'm trying to remember what the other items were.
The payment plan.
The payment plan. We did put together a payment plan. It's city manager has it. I believe she's probably discussed it with each of you. And we've been working with customers on terms as they get in trouble. So the payment plan was in fact created and city manager has it.
If I can add on that, if you recall during our budget process, we asked you to amend the policy related to the electric utility rates and our ability or authority to make changes in the plans. And so you did approve where the city manager can work with the customer service staff to work and make adjustments to payment plan when necessary.
Thank you. So this is the residential utility rate tier issue.
Correct. One of the things you asked us to look at was residential rate tiers, and I believe was at the recommendation of Commissioner McBoy, or Vice Mayor McBoy rather. And we did. We looked into it. For history purposes, Commissioner's right. The city did at one time have multiple tiers. We believe it was 3 tiers. We went back to the records and found that information. So we did some work on this, and we're going to go through the details. One of the things that we did was we also checked with the Florida Public Service Commission to make sure it was okay, because while they don't approve our rates, they do have broad oversight of the structure. They had no issues with going to 3 tiers. None whatsoever. So that's not a concern. Well, when wants to do that. In designing these, we decided that it should be revenue neutral, at least in what we're presenting you tonight. And tonight, we're not asking you to approve anything. You can, because we thought you might just take this and think about it some more and come back with some specific direction. So this is a starting point. We made it revenue neutral. So what does that mean? That means that we rearranged the tiers in a way that the total revenue to the utility stays the same. So if we want the lower tier to go down in cost, then the middle or upper tiers have to go up in cost. That was looked at by the Public Service Commission staffer, and not the commission itself. They did not rule on it, but a staffer looked at it and said she didn't see any particular problem with it. So this is a suggestion on where those tiers might break out. It's for you to decide if you like those groupings, or if you don't like the groupings and suggest us to do it otherwise. We would normally not adjust our rates, and I say normally because we haven't done it in many years, until January 1. So the thought was, if we're going to make these adjustments, we'd want to get some pretty good direction ahead of time, because obviously we have to do some adjustments within the billing system to accommodate that. But the presumption is that if it was done at one time and it's the same billing system, that we could go back and do it again. So it'll take some research, but it seems to me like we would be reactivating something that had previously existed with new numbers.
So this would create 3 tiers.
I think you can tell us some more, right? In your comment.
Yes, I'm looking for the distribution of the percentages. So if we look at the data table that we have provided, the current distribution and the numbers are blended for the colorblind guy here. It looks like 59% of the customers that we have fall into the 1,000 kilowatt hours or less category. So 59% of our customers are using 1,000 kilowatt hours or less over the course of the year. And 41% are above that. If we, and this is, let's call this the straw man what we threw out there for discussion, and you can adjust these. What we've looked at here is an alternate distribution, which would have 24% of the customers in the bracket of 500 kWh per month or less. So 24% would fall into the 500 or less category. 35% would fall in the category of 500 to 1,000. And 41% would remain in the category of 1,000 to 2,000 or above 2,000. And then what you see in the current distribution is we got into a little bit more detail as to exactly what percent falls in. And we did this in tighter slots. So you could say 8% of our customers are getting the minimum bill. 16% of the customers are getting a bill that's somewhere between 214 kilowatt hours and 500 kilowatt hours. And it follows on as you go to the list. 18% is using between 500 to 750. And you can see the percentage distributions. It's entirely up to you as the policy board to decide how you would want to suggest us to guide that or to move those brackets around. What we did though is we held this constant so the utility revenue wouldn't change. Because I thought that was your intention. I didn't read that you intended to increase the revenues. Right. I thought you were trying to just encourage energy conservation and do some redistribution of the costs, which is certainly within your rights to do.
I believe Stokes have her right on this.
Yeah, I have a question because it shows the tiers in both the energy charge and the PCA. The more energy we buy, do we end up paying a higher cost?
Certainly the total bill goes up and you
kilowatt hour.
At times, yes. Yes, you can go from one bracket to another. There are brackets that are groupings. If you exceed one grouping, you go to the next higher cost bracket.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that I'm not in favor of this as it is because it would mean increasing the bill for the average customer, which I can't support. But I was just curious about if the PCA is really supposed to be, those energy costs are really supposed to be passing through our cost onto the customers. So I just want to make sure that in further discussions that what we're doing is actually representative of what's happening behind the scenes on our end. That like we pay, if we're paying less for the first 500 kilowatt hours times however many, and then it's proportional to what we're passing on to the customers.
I think that, but it isn't really how it works.
I think we should
sort of right. I think it's a difficult subject, but to look at it this way, we purchase about 480 or 490,000 megawatt hours per year. That's a big jump. The first 190 some odd thousand come from nuclear at about $52 a megawatt hour, 5.2 cents per kilowatt hour. That's in our base rate because it's almost all capacity. The variable component is very small. It's a very fixed cost. So nuclear is over there. Under the supplemental capacity contract, there are prices for capacity and there are prices for energy. And generally speaking, yes, as you're at the lower tiers, you're paying less for the energy. And then when you go above certain thresholds, the price steps up. And I can't get into details because that's confidential. But I can tell you that it does increase. So if you increase the amount of energy you use and go to the higher tier, certainly you pay more. If you increase the amount of capacity that you buy under the contract, you go to the higher tier as well.
Okay, so that's counterintuitive almost. Usually the more you buy, the lower it goes.
Yeah, but it's different.
No, in the utility industry, the rates go higher because your cost to produce energy gets higher. And so for example, think of it as a layer cake, and at the bottom of the layer cake is your most efficient plant. Sometimes I do this discussion in terms of you had a fleet of taxi cabs. You're going to run your most efficient taxi cab all the time. Your least efficient taxi cab, that 1986 Mercury Marquis, right, is going to run maybe 3 hours a month, but the Prius is going to run every hour of the month, right? I'm just exaggerating for the purpose of helping people understand that. So you run your most efficient units first, your least efficient units last, and those last units are very expensive. So as you go up that layer cake, higher and higher and higher, big user, August 15th in the afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're up into those upper tiers. Correct, exactly. And Commissioner Boyd probably might be better explaining this than I am.
Well, so
He understands it.
I just wanted to, thinking of all the different options, if it made sense to do the 3 layers for both the energy charge and the PCA. And I see that in this scenario that they're split up differently. So in the energy charge, it's the first 500 kilowatt, then the next 500, then additional. Where in the PCA, it's the first 500, the next 1,000, and then the additional. So is there a reason why we're dividing it at separate places for the energy charge versus the PCA?
I'm going to use my lifeline, Craig.
Yeah.
No, those blocks should be the same as 0 to 500, 500, 1,000, and over 1,000.
All right, so that might be a typo. And then my other question is, if you've run, this is one scenario where we divide, the cutoff is what I'm seeing is 500, 1,000. Or, 0 to 500, 500, 1,000, and then 1,000 plus. Have we tried running other scenarios like 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500, and then 1,500 plus? Or is this the only one we've tested so far?
No, we also looked at 750 and 1,500. The problem is in Lake Worth Beach, there's not a lot of kilowatt hours in the higher brackets. So to give a break to the lower brackets, there's just not much there. So the best would be to have a break, at 500 or some lower amount.
Okay,
That's what we found.
I appreciate that. And I would, any break we can give to people is a good thing, but I worry about giving a break to some residents at the expense of the average resident. And if our goal is really to try to promote energy conservation, maybe our residents won't see as much of a break, but more residents will benefit from this if we split it at 1,500, and we might achieve our goal of energy conservation for the high users.
So is your suggestion then that we run another scenario which holds the average customer constant and then makes
Yeah, that's one scenario.
Okay.
Anything like this, I feel like
we're not opposed to it, just want to make sure we understand what scenarios to run for you.
Yes, I'd love to. I mean, I'm gonna stop talking because I know we only have 30 minutes, but those were my thoughts on this. And I would love to, this is just one scenario, right? One possibility that we're looking at here.
Exactly.
I would rather see multiple ones that I can compare and look at and analyze.
Absolutely. So it's a complicated subject. We wanted to get something out there to start, knowing that we had made a commitment on July 26th that we would bring you something back. So this was the start of a discussion.
Vice Mayor Boyd.
A quick question for Brian, because he's here. On the water, how many tiers do we have? Are we 3 or 5? 5. Okay, and the water tiered system, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a state mandate that says everybody has to do that. And the motivation was conservation. So a couple of comments from me. I too have a concern about where the break point is. I'm 100% with you on should be revenue neutral. We're not looking to do this as a way to sneakily bring in more money. That's not at all the objective. The objective is to give people an incentive to conserve. And so by that argument, if that's the objective, I think we're in agreement on that. The people who are at the nominal or average or typical, whatever you want to use, it's people who are in the 1,000 to 1,200 kilowatt hours a month annual average, which means you got to adjust it seasonally for temperature and all that stuff. But on the annual average, those people shouldn't be penalized. They're doing about the right thing. If you're going higher than that, that's where you want to give people an incentive to start, hey, maybe I can save some money by pulling myself back down to that target level. So it didn't seem like the right incentive point to put the break point right at the average. Put it up a bit and then put it up higher from that. I hear you on how many customers we have. It's been a while since I looked at the numbers, but what I was struck at when I looked at them before is there are a lot of people way high. And I suspect the folks that are down at the 300, 500, they're either crazy people like me who risk divorce by being relentless about their efficiency at the house. But it's very few people, or they're people who are here seasonally and they're just, they're running a minimal amount of stuff. So that's not really the target. The target should be above the nominal number, above the 1,200. So I would say, I don't know whether we want to think about following the water and do 5 categories. I'm okay with 3, but you want to have some structure that people feel that they've got an incentive. I'm seeing some definite no's on the 5 back there. I'll go with that. 3 is okay. Start it maybe at 1,300, 1,400. As you go above that, now you want to push and encourage people to save money by coming down to 1,000, 1,200, and then do another one, 2,000, 2,500, somewhere in there. I think that optimization of where it should go, that your consultant can work on that. Keep it revenue neutral. Maybe talk with Brian about what, because there's 2 things, the break points and how much is the price differential at the different categories, and see how far, I have no idea what it is.
I think right now we have about a 4 cent per kilowatt hour difference between the upper tier and the lower tier, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Craig?
Remember that.
That's right.
That's a pretty
That's high. It's
And
just
gonna
the way
be-
the math works out. You can't get much savings for the low customers without really hitting the high customers.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we're trying to get savings but the people who are way low, they're not really going to get much savings anyway. Their bill is pretty low.
Right.
And they're already on board. I don't think you're really trying to save for them. You're trying to encourage the people who are higher than the average to help them. Hey, wow, we could save some money if we put a little more in it.
We'll certainly need some cover when the 5,000 kilowatt hour customer says, "What have you done to me?" Right? In that 2,100 square foot house. But
well,
now I don't mean to jump, but it's 9:34. We have so much to do.
I'm sorry.
I hear on both sides of me that we want more information. We want more alternatives to this formula. Am I correct?
Relook at the breakpoints.
Is this an item that we need to vote on tonight?
No. We were not asking for a vote. This. Yeah, we need direction. So would it be reasonable for each of you to forward to the city manager your suggestions on what the tiers might be, and we can run more models for you for a subsequent meeting?
Okay, let's do quick. Some of the other 2 commissioners have had their lights on and they do.
I just wanted real quick, in addition to looking at these tiers, I brought this to our city manager last week. One thing that most cities do is they'll send you a 1 bill for your water, your sewer, and your garbage, and then you get electric. I would really like us to look at billing separately every 2 weeks, our clients, our customers, because it doesn't make sense that we're hitting them all with this one big bill. If we can look at separating that bill into 2 different bills and giving them a 14 to 15 day window of when they have to pay those 2 separate bills, like every other municipality, I think that will help some of this angst that we're feeling on people paying their bills right now. And I know it's a billing complication. There's going to be more cost, but if this is something that we're looking to the future, like we keep saying we are, why won't we do what other municipalities do and separate the bill so we really don't hear how bad our electric rates are? And that people can see that we really do have separate rates. And we're thinking forward about letting you being able to pay your bill separately, giving them 14 to 21 days in between those bills. I think that's how we really move the needle in addition to these tiers.
You look at older municipalities that have electric utility.
Yeah, so no, like if you're in Del Rey, you get water, electric and sewer from them, and then you get your FPL bill.
Right.
So you're paying 2 different bills and they come usually within weeks of each other.
So
you're
one's
not
on the
hit-
1st of the month, one's on the 15th.
Correct.
Then
And so
one comes out of your first paycheck of the month, the other one.
Right, so they're not hit with this big bill all at one time. It will help people budget. And I know that it could be more costly, but again, this is something that we can look to the future of and say, could this work?
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay, Commissioner Diaz, just real quick.
I like that idea. Definitely would want to know how much that sort of thing costs. And I get to keep it short. All I was gonna say was basically, the more we have to purchase. You mentioned it gets more expensive. That makes sense to me because of not just the generation, but also I think whether intentional or not, the indirect benefit is it does incentivize people to use less, to purchase less. And I feel like, these tiers of I appreciate the resolution that is presented. It's really like that table is just really good information. But I would like to see, and I'll try to get the suggestion in. I don't know how to explain it, but essentially I feel like our tiers should reflect the way that we purchase that power. The more that we have to buy, the more expensive because it costs more to generate it. And that in its own way, whether intentional or not, is incentivizing users to purchase less. And I think we can kind of do the same with our tiers.
Okay. Odd is a business that encourages people to buy less. Counterintuitive is my word of the night. We have a couple comments. So in terms of action, do I hear us saying that we really don't want an action tonight, that you want to come back with more?
That's correct. We were not asking for a vote tonight. This was more for discussion and direction.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that you're going to send us back via email your suggestions on the tiers, and then we'll work on those. I don't know if I can guarantee it by the next meeting, but we'll start work on it right away.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have any comments?
I do, Madam Mayor. I have 4 in here, and I did want to point out that the staff report does ask to move to approve or disapprove a change to the electric utility, residential electric rate.
Yeah. So we're not going to do that tonight, but let's hear, we've rebelled. Let's hear from your 4 people.
Not a problem.
And while she's getting them, I think we're all clear that with this recommendation, revenue neutral.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Because that is important.
Okay. Let's listen to
the first comment that I have is from Carmencita Falez, 1658 Sunset Avenue. I am a single parent of 2 autistic children with limited resources. I am unable to find more employment or ways to make extra money that I already am because I am stretched out and already on less than 5 hours of sleep daily. I have always tried to conserve on utilities, and yet no matter what, my bill has kept increasing. It is more than doubled at this point. How is this possible? If it continues to increase, that will be the end to our monthly food budget, which is already quite modest. What do you plan to do for the people here that aren't wealthy and don't have unlimited disposable income? Or do you plan on supporting the blatant gentrification happening before our eyes until we are forced to leave for those with financial privilege? The second comment that I have is Amy Ferreter, 30 South J Street. Utilities are a part of housing costs. This city commission declared a housing emergency on August 16th. Vice Mayor McVoy indicates there are a number of angles and we are eagerly looking to go in a number of different directions, anything that works. Utility costs are a part of what we all pay per month to stay in our homes, but I don't see any action beyond lip service to address this issue. On average, Floridians spend about $257 per month on electricity. The Lake Worth Beach utility bills are currently out of control and much higher than the state average. Many of us cannot afford $700 to $800 monthly utility bills on top of rent, insurance, food, medicines, and other basic needs. It appears that this commission is unable to manage the utility costs effectively and keep us in our homes during this housing emergency. I urge you to keep housing affordable by addressing runaway utility costs. Raising rates is not the answer. The next one that I have is from Catherine Nolan. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, this commission has stated that the PCA cost adjustment will raise residential electricity bills by 16 to 18% beyond usage, but many residents, myself included, are receiving bills with a PCA far exceeding that. The issue has been raised numerous times over the last month with no formal clarification from the city as to why this is happening and to such a degree that it requires a published explanation. And the last one that I have is from Adrian Copeland, 127 North Palm Way, Unit 1. Good evening. Even though it may not be when this is read due to the banning public comments, last time I checked, 2 + 2 still equals 4. Percentages are definite numbers and algebraic equations are logical. The disparity in utility rate height increases does not make mathematical sense nor logical sense. We the people deserve transparency, logic, and mathematical sense to be made. Please provide it. All four were against.
Thank you. And Peggy Fisher. Who's gonna waive? Her right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're not gonna take a vote on this. We're gonna come back with a little more information with input.
Do we need a motion to table it?
Yeah, I don't know if we're supposed to,
As long as you can still bring it back, even though you table it, right?
we can always bring it back. Yeah, I think at the table, you're not supposed to talk about.
Motion to table, if our attorney says that's the right thing to do.
What do you want to do?
When you table something, you're not supposed to bring it back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do.
Tabling means no discussion. We're just gonna, it's the easy way out.
And I apologize for not reading the statement. It said we were asking for votes, and I completely blanked on that. So
No.
All right, 9:43, and we're at the beginning of the new business.
Finally,
We're
Mr.
on
Shields?
new business C.
Oh, no, new business A, what it's C now.
Yes, it's C.
It was A, now it's C. So here we go. Florida Department of Environmental Protection Grant Agreement for Parrot Cove Stormwater Resilience Project. Do we have, here's Jerry. Welcome back.
Madam Mayor, members of the commission, I'm Jerry Kelly, grants analyst. The agreement sets forth the terms and conditions for the use of $450,000 in grant funding from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The project involves mitigation measures to relieve the chronic flooding in the Parrot Cove neighborhood, including the public golf course. The project is comprised of two primary activities. The first is the procurement of the services of a consultant to design, permit, and provide CEI services for the project. The second is to implement mitigation measures that include necessary repairs to the outfall pipes that have separated, and they're now allowing sand and soil to gather. They're eroding the surrounding land and causing sinkholes. It also calls for the installation of tidal check valves on the major outfall pipes on 4th, 6th, 8th, and 9th Avenues North. This will help prevent the backflow of water from the lagoon into the neighborhood. The city will be providing $450,000 in local cost share, and the term of the agreement is valid through September 20th, 2025.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Maligo.
Malia made a motion.
So second.
Thank
We're all- Everything should be that quick.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, now, Mr. Shields, good evening.
Good evening.
You could have gone home, had dinner and come back, right?
Could have.
So this is the
We're opposed to odor control.
water utility, second amendment to the agreement with Allied Universal Corporation to purchase sodium hypochlorite, thank you, bleach for water treatment and odor control.
Correct. This is simply another amendment to our agreement with the chemical company, Allied Universal. They supply us with bleach for disinfection at the water plant.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Stokes. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, agreement with Pantropic Power Incorporated for repair and maintenance of the Lime Water Treatment Plant generator.
Correct. Our line plant generator is a Caterpillar, and they're serviced by Pantropic, the one and only service agency in South Florida. So it's a sole source. And this is an agreement for a 1-year period. We renew it annually.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
To approve.
Second.
By all in favor?
Aye.
Love
Please
it.
give it to Ed.
Feedback. Oh,
I don't think
Oh.
so.
me. Okay, next up, agreement with Cummins Incorporated, doing business as Cummins Power South for repair and maintenance of the Cummins generator.
Yeah, we have a number of Cummins generators system-wide, one for the reverse osmosis water plant and others throughout the city.
This agreement is for a 3-year period with Cummins. Again, the sole source, and so they're the only ones that service and provide OEM parts for their generators.
Motion to approve?
Motion to
One
approve.
quick
Oh.
question. How long is this agreement for? Because we're talking about running power across the lagoon to power the casino, and I see that one of them will do that. This is for 5 years.
5 years.
You think we'll have the line across in 5 years? I'll bet we will. Oh, wait, I'm seeing no from the back.
We still need the generator.
You would still need a generator. Yes, yes.
Motion to approve. Vote.
All right, Commissioner Malika, I see your lights on.
I just want to say thank you for the backup, because when I went through and looked at year over year, I could figure out that 1 year was more money because of the battery charge. So the backup was very clear, and I want to say thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McBoy, second by
Second.
Commissioner Malega, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on. Agreement with Sulfuric Acid Trading Company, Inc. to purchase sulfuric acid for water treatment.
Again, sulfuric acid is used in our reverse osmosis system to lower the pH and properly treat the water. This company is the lowest responsive bidder on this particular bid, and we recommend their approval.
Do I have a motion by Commissioner McBoy, second by Commissioner Stokes, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Authorizing purchase of water meter encoders from the Avanti Corporate Company.
Yes, the Avanti company supplies those Itron encoders, which are the radio system that sends our signals back from the AMI meter reading system. Again, a sole source in our system.
Only question I have is that some of us have been around a while, a little sensitive about instrumentation for this. We definitely want it. We've had some issue with the electric meter ones. Are these guys more solid than, I forget who the guys that chose the other ones, but I mean, our EMI is.
Right, I know Ed has been tracking this. I believe the water meter reading encoders have been a little bit more reliable than what's seen on the electric side.
I'm guessing it is too. Any comment from Ed that would be helpful?
The devices on the water meters on the electric meters carry both the water information and the electric information back to us. So
this is a short transmitter to the electric
I
meter.
believe so.
And then-
Yes.
So, and does that mean is the part that we've had trouble with on the electric side, is it the radio or is it the reader of the electric?
It's the communication module from Tantalus that sits on the meter that has had problems communicating, not with the data itself. The data is accurate, but communications back. So that requires us to read meters manually. Not all of them, but on any given day we're reading some meters manually because they're not communicating.
So we're going to be aspirational and assume that the water meter instrumentation is going to send it to Tantalus, and someday we'll get those straightened out and we'll get all of that real time. That sound about right?
Correct. And the water department needs to do this to keep operating while we work with that issue. They have to continue to install these devices.
Motion to approve.
By Commissioner Malega, second by Commissioner McBoyle, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I
I'm sorry,
didn't.
Oh. you made the motion, all right. Next, authorizing the purchase of water meters from Badger Meter.
That is in Wisconsin, by the way.
I know.
They are, they're top rated.
Yeah, and Badger, again, a sole source, they are what we use in our system, our AMI system. They communicate with the Avanti Itron encoders that were previously approved. So we purchased for new construction, replacement meters, et cetera, and to restock the warehouse.
Motion to approve.
By Commissioner McBoy, second by
Second.
Commissioner Stokes, all in favor?
Aye.
We got 9 minutes, kids. Unless
Thank you. I think you're done.
Done with water.
First Amendment, we like.
Everybody have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks for having my back.
First Amendment. To agreement with Stewart T. Irving Company for the delivery of underground cable. Rebecca,
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Honorable Commissioners, this is just giving us a little bit more buying power as we go out and continue with the SHRIP project to continue to replace old, outdated underground conductors, and allows us to buy, give us a little bit more buying power.
These are for the substations.
Substations, enters, exits, yes.
okay.
Yeah. Motion to approve.
By Commissioner McCoy, second by Commissioner Stokes, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up, work order number 5 with Wilco and Electrical LLC to complete undergrounding of the 6003 and 6004 feeders at the canal.
6003, 6004 are our distribution feeders, main distribution feeders that come out as a canal substation. You have approved and we are in the process of breaking ground for the 138 transmission line that these lines actually intersect through. So we need to relocate them so we can continue to do the 138 work. And this also sets us up for the 8-bay distribution canal work.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
By Commissioner Stokes, second by Commissioner McCoy, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, 8 minutes. Third amendment to the agreement with KVA Inc. for the canal distribution substation prefabricated control house.
I'll go quickly.
Oh, you will light on, yes. Okay, real quick.
I question this because it is a third amendment to an agreement that almost hits $1 million. And I just want to thank Valentina, she's still hanging out at 10 o'clock, for the thorough explanation. And going forward, I just want to make sure that we put that as part of the initial backup, so the public knows the backstory on why we're doing these kind of amendments that are this large.
Yes, ma'am, we are putting those them steps in place so that we can include that for you.
Thank you.
And I also thank Valentina for her explanation on this as well too.
Very detailed.
Yes.
For those in the background people that just makes things work.
Yeah,
Yes.
the background was
We appreciate that.
with-
That's a motion to approve.
By second from
I'll second.
Commissioner Diaz. Thank you.
They were on such a
For a while.
roll,
You sound
so-
quiet. All right, do we have vote? Didn't call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. That's unanimous. Next up is a purchase order with Omicron for GMC 356 testing equipment and the ARCO 400 for testing relays and reclosers.
So our original testing equipment, 20-year-old equipment finally failed on us. And we are in the process of continuing to deploy and install field devices that require this equipment. So we just need to buy the new updated equipment so we can continue to test and operate and do what we need to do.
Thank you. Do I have a
Motion approved.
by Commissioner, do I have a second? By Commissioner, yeah, he's right on it. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and I believe, last but not least.
I
have
think
more?
we're done.
We're done.
We're done.
We pulled item out. We pulled.
Yes.
So just,
We have 6 minutes to spare. Let's
yeah,
go.
in closing, just a few quick items. We talk a lot about energy audits. We months ago changed to doing energy audits 6 days a week to alleviate the workload because we'd had a high demand. And we're also bringing on an outside energy auditing entity. So we'll be going to 7 days a week on energy audits.
So for folks who have their, how does.
Correct. It's all free. Don't charge anybody for it. Yes, small businesses, we can't do a 3-phase,
Yeah.
because that's not our business, but small business certainly.
Might
We,
be,
we could be able to do that. And there's very good information comes out of it, but also,
yeah, yes, we have.
for those of you that want to arrange for a tour, we are beginning to receive very large equipment in our main yard, a lot of work happening in the main yard, one-on-one tours we can do. Also, the large transformers and steel have started arriving at Canal. So there's millions of dollars worth of equipment out there that you all approved for us to buy. If you want to get a look at it as we get ready to start construction, we'll go ahead. We will not do a formal groundbreaking, but we'll do a more formal opening when we go commercial operation.
Thank you. Commissioner, City Manager, I keep electing you.
Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
no comment.
I'm comfortable in my skin. I did want, Mr. Liberty, if you can take less than 1 minute to, I know we had a large outage yesterday due to some of the work that we were doing on our reliability work. And so we did receive one comment suggestion today that I thought would be great, just to give a quick.
Sure. As a part of system hardening reliability improvement, we've been making some modifications to what we call our east and west bus. And the easiest way I can explain that is if you, and don't do this, but if behind your electrical panel at work, there's breakers on the left and there's breakers on the right. Behind that is the left bus and the right bus. We have a west and east bus. What we did was remove the cover. It's all exposed anyway out there. And we cut the east and west bus each into thirds. So instead of being one solid bus, it's now 3 sections. In order to do that work, we had to transfer all the load from the west bus to other places. And we did that last week with an incident. And this week we're doing east bus. We had to move the load off the east bus. And we had gotten wrong. But in doing that, everybody in one side of the city was on 2 circuits. We had an outage that we believe was caused by possibly an animal contact. We see some damage on some insulators. We disclosed the location privately. I can, but not in public. And we're going to correct that in a few days. When we do these projects, is because we're adding reliability to the system. So we hang on by a thread while we do it. We waited till the loads came down. We didn't want to do it in midsummer. And what we'll do now over the coming weeks is once we complete the segmenting of the buses, we'll come back and make some minor rearrangements and take 1/6 at a time, replace all the switches and all the insulators that date back to the 1970s. We'll remove all of that and put brand new ones in. And then we'll move to the next section, the next section, next section, until we've done all 6 of those sections. You can't do this without segmenting these buses and moving the customers around to other circuits.
Question, was the outage planned or was that the animal issue?
The outage was an animal issue.
Okay.
The outage on the bus itself was planned, but everybody should have been fine until we think it was an animal contact, but we haven't found the remains of the animal to be convinced that there was an animal contact. We found where we believe the damage occurred. The good news is that the protective devices that are installed to protect the transformers, which are about 1.25 million with a 2-year lead time now to purchase, it protected the transformer. We did our inspection of the system. Jason Bailey, Assistant Director Bailey, did an excellent job with the staff in the control room and then brought the system back in a controlled and safe fashion, and everything's proved okay. We're going to remain in that contingent out of normal configuration through the rest of this week. Hopefully Friday night into Saturday, we'll be back to normal configuration and then go back and do them 1/6 at a time as we go through. Hopefully by Thanksgiving, certainly by Christmas, we should have the entire main yard basically rebuilt and equipment from the 1970s removed.
Yeah, it was kind of rough in the middle of the workday.
It was very rough.
Wasn't planned.
Mr. Gill, I think, and even my favorite boy recommended I buy, I don't know, I know times are tough, it's $60. Buy this thing, it was like maybe $60.
No, UPS.
Yes.
UPS.
It lasted my entire outage yesterday. I plugged my router into it and I was still on Zoom. I was still in my workday meeting because the internet doesn't go out because the internet went out because it's lost its power thing. So because we have those short little outages that would reboot my internet and I would be kicked out of meetings, this thing lasted the entire outage. And I didn't experience anything. It
Yeah.
was really helpful.
One on your router, put one on your computer and you're good to go.
It's 10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock.
But thank you to Jason also for a very thorough
Thank you,
report.
everyone.
On that. And-
I'm sorry, who made the motion to adjourn?
Maliga. Who seconded it?
Maliga.
Second, do we
I'll
not,
second
are we
it.
automatically cut off?
All in favor?
Hi.